Good evening and welcome, good afternoon, sorry, and welcome to the British coverage, the English language coverage of the 10 Hours at the Ring, brought to you by Schwitzer Racing League. Schwitzer Racing League is a German league, very much in its startup. What they're doing here is they're putting together GT3 versus GT4 at the Nürburgring. We're going to the most recent Formula One circuit, recently hosted the Eiffel Grand Prix in 2020. As opposed to the Nordschleife, should be a little bit easier for those of you who watched the previous stream from previous stream of mine around the Nordschleife. It should be easier for you to keep up. Now, mostly German teams, and I do apologise in advance for any pronunciation. I've tried my absolute best to master those. We've got now 16 teams for the GT4 class, a slower class, and 20 teams for the GT3 class expected here today. It's going to be 10 hours of unregulated racing in terms of your strategy. So some drivers may choose to swap drivers at every opportunity, get some fresher drivers in, keep their drivers fresh all the way through to the end of the race. There'll be some who maybe tend to go for one big long stint, in which case then you might need to change tyres a little bit less, but you're going to be dealing with driver fatigue towards the end. All of it is going to come down to how many drivers you have. Some drivers, or some teams have 2 drivers, some teams 3 and some teams 4. We'll take you through the lineups a little bit later on once all drivers and teams are present and accounted for, as we go through what is, as you can see here, a very changeable Nürburgring so far in terms of the conditions. You've got sunny spells at the moment, with rain expected a little bit later on, but that track is looking incredibly damp. So strategy will be very key here in terms of whether you try and be on the right tyres at the right time at all times, knowing that you're going to lose a lot of time in the pits, or whether you maybe stick it out, stick to your strategy, and see if you can cope when the tyres that you're on are not the right tyres. We'll take you through the driver lineup shortly, in which case, for the moment, I should let the stream progress as it is now. We're watching the GT4 entry. I think that's the Camaro of Stefan Kopsch. Part of the 4th entry for Schwitzer Motorsport. Here there's 2 in GT3 and 2 in GT4. So a quick thing to take you through as well with the GT3s and GT4s and how inter-class racing will work. All GT3 entries will start ahead of the GT4s, so the GT4s will be starting from row 10 onwards, and so we'll be showing as 20th. What we'll aim to do is try and make sure that things are as obvious as possible, especially where there's GT3 drivers or teams that do have dramas, especially if you get damage early on. You can lose 3 or 4 laps, try to fix that. Your race is practically over, but they'll be showing behind some GT4 cars. We'll try and make sure that we keep you on top of that as the racing goes on. With the GT4 class, they have no tyre blankets, nothing like that. You have to manually warm your tyres up. They've got more road tyres and certainly more of a road car feel to them in terms of the way that they're handled, whereas the GT3s are souped up, tuned thoroughbreds with slicked up, wide slick tyres, a lot more power, and so we'll be aiming to lap, as you can see, about 8 to 10 seconds faster than the GT4 cars, which means that quite quickly you'll get laps traffic that plays a part, and it's all about then your traffic management from GT3 to GT4. Instead of GT4, it's all about making sure that when you do get laps, you don't lose as much time as your rivals. So we're looking here now. That's the Ford Mustang MSA Racing entry with Hoopers at the wheel there. Take you through the driver lineups, as I say, before the racing starts, when we've got a full grid present and accounted for. But as you can see here, the Ford Mustang now recently bopped on the latest update, losing about 20% of its power. Effectively, a restrictor plate has been fitted to that car, but it has been lightened to make sure that the handling characteristics aren't quite so bad. So it should be a little bit less of a peaky car down the straight. Should be a bit easier to handle, and I expect that to go very, very well indeed. We've got a couple of Ford Mustangs currently having entered at the moment. Like I say, the gap between the top GT3 car at the moment and the top GT4, 8.5 seconds. That's Stefan Kopsch in the Camaro, where he's done very, very well to get that towards the top, because that can be a very difficult car to drive. You've got here now, that's Mauro Malizia's Scuderia 5 Racing in the Porsche Cayman, for example, is 1.6 seconds off just as they start to practice. Times don't really matter an awful lot here at this moment in time. Reason being that at the moment, drivers will have done the qualifying, they will have done hell and all practice previous to this, throughout the previous weeks and days leading up to this. At the moment, it's getting a setup car, usually for the lead driver. We'll talk to you more about that in terms of how lead drivers work, in terms of you have to have the main driver in the party to start with, and then it's going to be about, there's also a lot of in the background in terms of making sure that your driver's present and accounted for, make sure that they swap. Some will use a keyboard, some will use the controllers, but it is imperative that you do not mess that up. Mess that up, it could cost you a lap, it could cost you the race. See the wipers going on the Ford Mustang there, Roth Hopert at the moment. It's not yet raining, but look at that in half an hour's time. I know we're in free practice, so I know that won't matter, but that could mean, as we look at the timetables here, just try and see if there's any schedules at all as to what that might mean for the race later on. So if we go back there, so if we take a look there. So 11 a.m. free practice, and then it's gone from Saturday, so it will be completely irrelevant in that case, because the race is 11 a.m. on the Sunday, so to speak. So it could be completely different conditions for the drivers to contend with. Just going through here now, so we've got 26 teams in at the moment with 4 minutes to go. There'll be a few who are coming in. There's been a few dropouts, or there will be a few dropouts, and there will be a few who don't take to the start. Hence why you've got the 3 streamers. You've got myself as the English streamer, and I think through Schwitzer's own YouTube, sorry, you've got then the 2 German streamers there. Obviously, this is a German league, and very much going to be a German language league, so a lot of the drivers will be following it through there. If not, that's where I come in, and hopefully I try and make sense with you, for you, what's going on here, as we start to then go through the teams. So who we're expecting to drive in the GT3 series. I'm going to take you from the top, purchase the Schwitzer Motorsports first entry, which should be of Marco Seibert, Pascal Botha, Jonas Gertz and Timo Hockhausen. We'll take you through the cars again very shortly on that one. They're currently in the Ford Mustang 444. From the second Schwitzer Motorsport team, which we've just seen there, which is Stefan Dahmer and Dennis Bloom. They are currently in, I'll just quickly make sure to go and find those as well. They are currently in, it's got ever so dark all of a sudden. They're currently in the McLaren down the bottom there, number 33. Be a bit easier when we're going through the grid as well. NRW Motorsports Performance, the number 5 car, I think is, no, that's the GT4 entry. So we just try and see now who else is in. Good luck reading the Lexus. That is the South African entry, by the way, of Logistical Nightmare Racing. Logistical Nightmare it may be, but certainly a nightmare to try and track who's out there. We're going to try and have a look now. I think that's going to be Donovan Leah and Gabili and Bailey, Dean Kurtze and Bester Putgeiter in the South African team there. Race news from, I think there's a couple from Canada, there's a couple from the United States, 3 or 4 entries from Britain, and the majority coming from Germany and 1 French team, I do believe. We'll make sure then to take you through those very shortly as we go through we've got 2 minutes already until this race gets underway. I'm not 100% sure on the lead time. Usually it's sort of 3 to 4 minutes. I would suspect with everything that's coming in, might be a little bit longer as the drivers all settle into their team parties to try and work out strategy and try and talk their way through. Communication's going to be a massive thing, but not too much. I sometimes feel like if you've got 4 drivers in a team at all talking to you about track conditions, it might get a little bit messy. As long as the communication is clear and concise, maybe that's 2 or 3 drivers maximum in a team, you know, for a 10-hour race, you think there's going to be 2 or 3 doing a 2 or 3 hour stint. You want to make sure that, that what your feedback you're getting is, you know, clear, concise, and is accurate. And I think sometimes if you have too many cooks in the kitchen, that might spoil it a little bit. We'll see how that works out, as Pascal Voter there is, well, he's half a second up at the moment, getting some important laps ahead of what is expected to be a very changeable race in terms of conditions and in terms of position. So 10 hours will take you from 2:30 p.m. UK time, 3:30 p.m. Central European time, to it will be 12:30 in the United Kingdom, and I think then it will be half past 1 in the morning in Germany. So 1:30 on Sunday morning, this will finish in Germany. So we're going through now. I'm just going to take you through the commentary times because I won't be able to do the whole 10 hours. But I think I've just very helpfully from our who's one of the league admins sent me over a schedule. So I think in German there's going to be, for the first 2 hours, it's going to be both myself and the German streamers coming through then. That's from 2:30 our time all the way through to 4:30. And then there's going to be an hour where there's little commentary before the Germans come back at 5:30. That's 6:30 European time. And I myself come back an hour later. There's more German commentary that goes all the way up till 10:30, I think, German time, and 9:30 our time. And then all of us still get full coverage for the last 2 hours from 11:30 to 1:30 in Europe and 10:30 to midnight in the United Kingdom. So promises to be an exciting, action-packed 10-hour race. They often are. Despite the lulls, there might be a few times where you're not quite sure on position, but that is the beauty of endurance racing. So we're into the wait time, so we won't be far away from being able to build this up properly and make sure that all of you have got the necessary information in terms of drivers. Stefan Dahmer goes a little bit faster in the second Schwitzer Motorsport entry in GT3 in that black and yellow Porsche, or largely black Porsche with yellow trim. Just going to get quicker and quicker, and I think it's important now for a lot of the drivers. I know there's some in the pit lane. Important for a lot of the drivers to try and get an idea of track evolution, where the grip's going to be when it's damp, where it's going to be when it's wet, and quite how these cars are going to react really to the different track conditions, because it's going to test man and machine a little bit more than your standard dry race. Just trying to see there's Fix Phantom in the British entry. That's Apex GT McLaren. He's just pulled off after a fairly quick time. And, of course, as soon as we get to that, we've got 3 minutes to take you through the race. 3 minutes as the grid lines up. We've got a couple of drivers missing here. So we've got 26 entrants. I think that goes from GT3 to GT4 there. So, going to take you through. Pole position is Pascal Voter in the first of the Schwitzer Motorsport entries for GT3. You've got... in second on the grid is Fabio Travaglioli in the Italian entry Virtual Pro Racing Conero Ferrari. Third place, you've got Marcus Carlos. I'll just make sure to take a look at this again. In third place, you've got for the MSA Racing 414, one of the British entrants here. You've got, that should be Marcus Carlos. In fourth, it is Hopert in the second entry for the British MSA Racing Team 415. Hoffman for Bremsbacken Spreiser. I will get that wrong, so I may just start calling that team press because that will kill me. You've got there for the Bremsbacken Spreiser entrance. That is in the Car 100 Porsche. In sixth place, you've got then Car 777. Not a great angle, it must be said, with how this is started. You can't see, but they will be there. We'll take you through the formation lap as well. That is Maserati in the Ferrari 777 NRW Performance Team. Stefan Dahmer in the Porsche 999. Porsche is qualified 7th ahead of Rust in Lamaxo Esports. The second entry for McLaren. That's one of the first of 4 McLarens on the grid so far. Stewart's in the BMW car number 102 is starting 9th. As we've got, I think, up to 15 GT4 entries. For car number 102 for the VW Motorsports N24 GT3 entry ahead of Phantom in the Apex GT, the British squad racing team there. Full car number 45. Schwab for the KEK Sim Racing team. McLaren is car number 16. He's starting 11th for that team ahead of Freezy and Lamaxo's other entry, the first entry for McLaren, with Cornoro in the 13th GT3 entry for BMW. That's 666. Then you've got the logistical racing nightmare Sniper Racing, which will, of course, need me to get me binoculars out and zoom into the team. That's Donovan Layer starting in the Lexus. Could be a bit of a weapon down the straights, but can tear its tyres up, so they might have to get a little bit clever on entries there. Ahead of Sergio Jimeno in the Spanish Hispania Racing Nexus Junior team. A bit of an homage to the Hispania Racing team. A further 11 entries then for GT4, with Irish starting for Schwitzer Motorsport's third entry. That's the first of the GT4 entries ahead of Nusi in Effect Motorsport for the Aston Martin. Solid all-round at the Aston Martin. I expect that team to go well if they don't hit problems. Stefan Schneider is racing for the Jamaica Connection. Evil Racing in the third McLaren, which is the first of the GT4 entries for McLaren. Then you've got Loyer for Gridline Motorsport in the Mercedes, starting in fourth in class for car 222. We'll try and avoid saying 19th place because it won't work and it will just lead to a bit of confusion. Mauro Milizia in the Porsche, starting fifth place. They go off onto their formation laps. For Scuderia 5 Racing's GT4 entry ahead of Kramer in the McLaren in sixth place in GT4. Yannick Deur for Dimit Erneplaner is starting seventh in the KTM Crossbow. Excited to see how that goes. Looks a very entertaining car to drive, I am sure. Excited to see quite how that goes. A bit of a road pick for 10 hours, but it is all fun at the end of the day. You've got Hernandez then starting for the Velocity Racing team. He's starting 8th ahead of Stefan Kopsch in the Camaro. Again, expecting that to be a challenge to drive, but I suspect that they may have a bit of guile up their sleeve to get them a little bit further up the road. For the UGA Motorsports entrance team, it's another Aston Martin as Hall takes the field second last in 10th. And Richard for Gridline Motorsport, Luca Richard for the Mercedes Gridline Motorsport. The first entry is starting at the back of GT4. So 26 entries there, 15 GT3s in the end, and 11 GT4s have made it through. As we see now, a minimum of 9 pit stops here, so effectively just over one an hour. They're going to, or just over, well, just over an hour. Sorry, that should make things a bit interesting here. Do you fuel your car as long as possible? Come in and then just take another little bit of fuel to get you to the end. That'll save you some time in the pits and get you track position, but your tyres will struggle towards the end. Or do you instead try and fill the car up to its maximum stint length, come in and then change your tyres then? Especially with it raining and being as wet as it is, it may be prudent to do the former, because you open yourself up there to save a bit of time. With how wet it's going to be over the first half an hour or so, it's going to be just a case of wet tyres only. There's going to be no opportunity to switch to dry tyres, certainly not in that first hour, but it's something that the drivers will be communicating about. You see Schwitzer Motorsport, for example, the pole car, he's got 4 drivers talking to him, whereas Virtual Pro Racing, Rokita, who's taken over that car from Travaglioli, is then he's only got 3 drivers to talk to about. Is that going to be too much information for Schwitzer Motorsport's lead entry, or is that going to be just enough? But they'll be talking about that all the way through, watching the streams. They'll be feeding back, the driver will be feeding back about how the track's going and how the track's feeling and how the conditions are looking, and it's all going to feed into what I'm sure is going to be an exciting 10 hours at the ring. One of the first ever attempts that Schwitzer Motorsport League, or the Schwitzer Racing League, have tried to do. Now we're going around the final corner to hopefully get this race underway very, very soon. You've got them as they all start to form up side by side. There's Vuta in the Mustang ahead of Rikita now in that Italian team Ferrari Virtual Pro Racing Canero. Go around Hubert and Erkil Choglu in 4th place now, who's taken over the BMW entry. We're going to have a look now and see as we are all forming up onto the grid, and we are go, and there's a drive-through start already for car number 5. Car number 5 at the back, I think, of GT4. He's already got a drive-through penalty. It's Kramer in 5th place, I think, as we go into the first corner. Vuta now going to the inside, being attacked from both angles, but I think he's held on. Rakita in the Ferrari has lost a place. I think he's lost a couple of places too. I think that's Erklin Çoglu, who's got up to second in the BMW. It's the Porsche then of Hoffmann in the Brembrach and Schwitzer entry, car number 100. He's now taken third place as they start to sort themselves out. We'll find out what's going on, because there has been some contact at the start of both turn 2 and indeed the stadium section. Car number 37 is in strife. We'll try and find out who that is. That is Nusi, who was second on the grid in GT4. Here's Vuta now as they start to hopefully now get to the end of the first sector, going into the Dunlop hairpin. We're just coming out of the Ford chicane now. You've got the Dunlop hairpin coming up, and there we will see exactly what's happened at turn 1. Vuta leads at the moment for the Ford Mustang team, I think. Oh no, he doesn't. No, he does not. He's got that's a lot of damage. Right, okay, ACC starting to do all of its things. There we go, it is Vuta, he is leading, but ACC is doing ACC things. Erklin Çoglu now takes up the challenge of trying to take over, or trying to pass, this dangerous Ford Mustang. He's got, though, Hoffmann all over the back of him. Stewart now takes up the challenge in 4th place. They had a Maserati in 5th for NRW Performance Ferrari 777. There's a bit of a gap already forming behind the first group. So Hoffmann in 3rd has 2 seconds on Stewart in 4th place, as now they start to lap that Durr who got stuck in the pit lane. That's going to be a bit of a problem, obviously, for GT4, as they're already going a lap down. Now, a little bit more in terms of down the inside, actually, goes Maserati, already launches a move, and that is a lovely move. Edges Stewart out of the way in the BMW, and the Ferrari, in the wet conditions, remember, very prominent, has already edged himself up to 3.5 seconds off the pace already. Vuta now has a decent but steady lead, 0.6 of a second. He want to try and see if he can stretch the gap a little bit more in that Mustang, with Erklin Çoglu behind, a real threat for MSA Racing's first entry, car number 414 in the BMW, looking very, very racy indeed. But he's got to be aware, because Hoffmann in the Porsche, now the blue and orange Porsche, is also looking to try and see if he can snap up any treats here. It's Erklin Çoglu fighting both forwards and backwards. Is he going to take a look? No, he's going to try and stay sensible here now. So we'll just take you through the running order. They've all crossed the line, apart from Durr in the 1-1-10 GT4 entry. So it's Vuta that leads for Schwitzer Motorsports in the Ford Mustang, car number 444, car number 414, Erklin Çoglu in the MSA Racing BMW, right on his tail, as you can see there, with Hoffmann in 3rd for the Porsche entry, car number 100. Maserati now, having taken 4th place off of Stewart, who's dropped back a little bit. He's in a bit of strife there. He's now in 4th place, a good 1.5 seconds ahead of Rakita. They had a horrible first lap, dropping 3 places on the outside of that Ferrari. We'll have to see exactly how that happened. Stewart in the BMW now drops to 6th place, having been 4th going into the final corner on lap 1. It's been a horrible start for them, but can they settle down now and get going in the race? Got a couple of ping issues, but nothing that shouldn't sort itself out with ACC doing ACC things. It's Phantom now, who I think has just lost a place to 7th to Stefan Dahmer in the 2nd of the Schwitzer entries. He's now 7th ahead of Phantom in the McLaren Apex GT entry. The Voss, the last Voss for Hispania Racing, he's now in 9th place. He's now in 9th place, as we've got Leo Schumacher and ACC's doing more ACC things, I regret to inform you, where is it? How's the leader has already lost? He's already behind 3. That's Pascal Vuta. He is right towards the back, but what's happened there? We're just going through the first entry of the first lap running order, and Erklin Çoglu has already got the lead off of a stricken Vuta, who's found his way back to, well, he's second last, he's 14th in class, and he's 23rd overall. So not only has he got to fight his way back up to the pack in GT3, but that is an awful lot of work to do for Vuta, who, to get through GT4, he will lose time, especially as whilst it's multi-class racing, they're under no obligations to let him through, so he's got to pick his way through now in 23rd. We'll go back and we'll try and start the order again, as Erklin Çoglu now takes the early lead, takes up the early running on what is lap 3. with Marcel Hoffmann in the Porsche entry very, very close behind. Only half a second behind in second place. Maserat now with the fastest lap. He's currently catching them in third place, with Rakita now in fourth, and Stewart having recovered to fifth by default, really, as Stefan Dahmer is all over the back of him. Stefan Dahmer in that Porsche, looking very, very racy indeed in the early wet running here in that Porsche 911. So Phantom now is trying to fend off an attack from Elias De Vos. De Vos with a lot of damage on the front end. De Vos has the run and he's taking the place. He has the position. He is now in seventh, with Phantom losing time again. Phantom comes back to the inside. He's not going to make it work around the outside there. It's too wet, or is he? Is he? De Vos doesn't quite leave enough room. Yes, he just blocks the run, and that is seventh place for Elias De Vos in the Hispania Racing Junior team. Phantom now dropping back to eighth place. Has been beaten up a little bit there in the McLaren, with Schumacher now in the second of the McLaren, the KK Sim Racing team, car number 16. 2.5 seconds back, Aaron von Broek in the 33. McLaren is now 10th, with Hopert making his way back up in the Mustang. Another one who's to have a bit of a poor start, really, Carb 415. He's now 11th, with Canoro in 12th, and Donovan Lair in the South African entry in 13th. Now we're just going to have a look and see. Vota is coming back through the GT4 field. He's just got past, I think that's Stefan Kopser. Would have been a bit of cooperation there from Schwitzer Motorsport to Schwitzer Motorsport, but he's 18th overall, and I would wager 14th, yes, 14th in GT3. Got then, who else is struggling at the back there? That is Maida, I think, in the McLaren, Lamaxo Esports McLaren. That has had some early damage early on, with Adrian Dewar now finally out in the 110 Mercedes. That had trouble at the start, and I would wager now is a couple of laps behind. We'll just quickly take a look at the timetables if we can, with Erkelin Çoglu now still no more than 6 tenths ahead of Hoffmann's Porsche. That could be a race-long battle, just depending on how that goes. With Maserat now 2.3 seconds back, and a further 4 seconds clear, I think, of Rakita in that Ferrari. Now Maserat, that car looks incredibly planty, doesn't it? Faster than a load of sponsors as well, so not messing about, no custom liveries here, thank you very much. You've got Stefan Dahmer again, who's got past Stewart for sixth. I think that was a move that we expected him to make. He was all over the back of Stewart, wasn't he, in that fast-starting car number 99 Porsche. Let's just take a look and see. Oh, no, we don't want to do that. Let's just take a look and see Dahmer now going up into the NGK chicane, and to complete what I think is lap 5 of this race. 2 minutes, 2 minute races, no, it will be lap 4. 2 minute laps at the moment, with the rain absolutely bucketing down, and not likely to abate for the first hour at least. Now, Erkelin Çoglu has still only got half a second on Hoffmann. They're both moving off the line. I wonder if that's the brake. The servos, that can't be to cool the tyres, unless they've overpressured their wets, which can happen even in severely wet conditions like this. You kind of want to make sure that you've got maximum grip possible as early as possible, but you can overpressure your wets. So that's Hoffmann there for Team Brembach and Schwitzer. In the Porsche, I will master that. In the Porsche in second place, you've got Maserat in third place now. 2.3 seconds. He is catching, isn't he? That's not 4 seconds back to Rakita at the moment. Well, it is 4.5 seconds back to Rakita, but that is not Rakita behind. That is a GT4 entry who's just coming out to the pit lane. That's car number 1, and car number 1 is that's Malizia in the Italian entry, Scuderia 5 Racing. So. Not into the pit window yet, because otherwise that would have counted as a pit stop. And there is still 9 showing. That's what that 9 in the yellow is. That's how many pit stops that they've made. Now, when that goes green, you won't be seeing it for a long, long time. When that goes green, they've completed all regulated mandatory pit stops. And at that point, they'll be free to race to the end. As we see, that is car 999. That's 199. So Elias De Vos, he's gone off now, and he's gone off to be passed, I think, by that Stewart in the BW Motorsports team. It is, and he is also now under attack from Phantom. Phantom wants a piece of 7th place, as De Vos, now having gotten a little bit lost, caught out at the Dunlop hairpin, is now back behind the steady BMW of Stewart. Stewart in the BW Motorsports, that 102 entry, holding his own at the moment. little bit tail happy, and is that going to present an opportunity there for De Vos? It is De Vos now going side by side up the straight. You want to be careful here, chaps. And De Vos just about backs out as they go into the chicane. Not much of a braking zone here, so I don't expect anything to happen until we get to the final corner, where maybe if he gets a better run, he might be able to force a mistake. He can't, because Stewart holds the line excellently. And it's another position gain for the BMW. He's been stealthy rather than electric, hasn't he? Because he's had a poor first lap, but anyone else that's made a mistake, he has been on it, and he's regained that position now. We were talking earlier about Pascal Vota in the Ford. He's just got past the first of the GT4 runners. That's Loic in the Gridline Motorsport entry, with Irish and Garcia fighting as well in the Mercedes team. But look how far Pascal Vota is. He'll be a good 15 seconds, I suspect. Yeah, 14.5 off the back of the last GT3 class. And by quick maths, I would say that is about 40 seconds off of the lead. Having led early on, it's not terminal with how long this race is. I remind you, it's a 10-hour race. But with 40 minutes, with 40 seconds, even in the first 10 minutes, it can be absolutely critical. Head down time for Vota. He's going to try and get through and try and pick up positions as and when he can. Now, is that me, or is the track looking slightly drier? It doesn't appear that the weather is getting any better, but they are. Certainly Kilincioglu here. Ilkay Kilincioglu in the MSA entry BMW. He's certainly moving offline to try and cool those wets down. I wonder if he's overpressured them a bit, because the car does look a little bit flighty at the back there, but he has got enough car control to master that. He won't worry about that at all. But there is a lot of wet. Yeah, he's cooling his tyres. He must be. So something to watch out for here. Maybe Hoffman in the Porsche, who is not cooling his tyres quite so much, might have better tyres, might have better pressures and wear, and certainly in terms of temperature. This might be something to watch out for. If the Porsche does get a chance to pass, I figure he'll be off like a scalded cat. You've got Maserati there now in the Ferrari, another man whose car looks pretty serene to drive at the moment in the 777 NRW Ferrari. He's 2.5 seconds off the pace, just keeping a watching brief. It's not a bad position to be in, with Rakita and Dharma a little bit further back. I think Rakita is starting to hold up Dharma. I suspect Dharma could be towards the sharp end if he could just get past that Ferrari in the Porsche. Very difficult to overtake at the best of times, but in the wet, doubly hard. As we spot now, is that Maserati in the wall? No, he saves it well. He ran slightly wide there, the Ferrari. Car number 777 ran slightly wide, and he does incredibly well to gather it up. It will cost him time. That's probably a second done, because he managed to just about catch it and cut the track to get back on. Won't cost him any time because he didn't gain any time, but that's just a warning shot there for the Ferrari. It's 2.6 seconds currently. I suspect you'll be looking at 3 seconds there. Well done to Maserati, because that could have been very, very tricky indeed. We're now looking at Rakita now. As 3.5 seconds, so he did lose a second there. Rakita now in the Ferrari, starting to hold, or continuing to hold up Stefan Dharma in the Porsche. But can Dharma get through, or is this going to be a bit of a theme now as Rakita drops 6 seconds off the back of the pack? Certainly, with only 15 minutes to go, certainly Dharma is looking very, very quick in that Porsche. He's already made up a couple of positions already on lap 1, and looking very, very racy indeed. As we go back to the scrap now, the eternal scrap for the first 15 minutes between De Vos, Hopert and Stewart. Stewart currently holding course in 6th place, 7.5 seconds off the pace of the next car, but he has got a bit of a train behind him with Phantom there. Phoenix Phantom, I think, in the Apex GT45 entry, the McLaren, also not far behind. He's 2 seconds off of the back of this pack, and I figure probably in the best place in terms of where he wants to be at the moment. You don't really want to be fourth in a train in the wet when there's so much spray. You can barely see where you're going. I think keeping a watching brief might be the best way as Stewart goes wide there. Does he force himself? Yes, he's on the defensive, and that is an easy position for Elias de Vos. Elias de Vos, damaged front end, takes 6th place as Stewart, just saying it was a steady, stealthy race, makes a mistake, and that's 2 positions gone because Hopers on the inside in the Ford Mustang has got a bit of a run on him going down the front straight. He's down the inside into turn 1, and that, I figure, should be 7th place. Now, Stewart does try to hang it wide round the outside, But if he's ruthless, he'll close that off. He isn't ruthless, though, and he still goes around the outside, Hopert, and Stewart nicks 7th place back. Excellent race between the two. And that is BMW back up into 7th place, having momentarily lost 2 positions. It's just the one he's conceded now, as the last of Boston and Ferrari should now hopefully get up the road and leave those 2 behind, as I think now Hopert's trying to go down the inside again, and that's again blocked off by Stewart. Excellent racing in the early stages. This, I remind you, 9 3/4 hours to go, so they'll have time to sort this out. But Stewart there defending robustly there from Hopert. Hopert lives to fight another day, though, with a little bit of damage down the side of that Mustang. Doesn't want to add any more ahead of their pit stops coming up in the next hour or so. We're going to go back to the front now, and what's happening here. It's that Urchelin Chockley, bit of a familiar sight at the moment. He is half a second clear of Hoffman, who's keeping him more than honest as they go through and up the straight to, I think that's the NGK chicane. It's not quite the one that the Formula One track used to use. It's a slightly more, slightly less aggressive, slightly easier, more flat corner rather than anything that's quite so tight as what the Formula One cars would use. And it's 0.6 of a second with Maserati now having dropped off a little bit after his half spin earlier on. Very well gathered, but it did cost them a bit of time. Now we're looking at Hoffman. He's now following. I don't think Hoffman's calling his tyres because he hasn't been calling his tyres any other point, but he is following to get a bit of a tow with the BMW very quick in a straight line. But I do fear that he is starting to tear his tyres apart. It might just be a matter of time before the 100 Porsche does go through and into the lead. You want to make it happen sooner rather than later, because the BMW, whilst he's in front, will just continue to hold up and impact the lead that the Porsche can get. But at the moment, it's the BMW that holds the lead. We've got now, I think, Rakita still holding up Stefan Dahmer. Is he or is he? No. Stefan Dahmer has managed to get past one. He's 1/10 of a second behind as we cross the line. And Stefan Dahmer, we've missed it, but he is now up into 4th place. Schwitzer Motorsports' second entry, first on the road at the moment, has got up into 4th place ahead of Rakita in the Virtual Pro Racing Ferrari. Car number 51 has ceded 4th place. So that is a change for position early on, and now Dahmer will hopefully now put into practice what I've said. He will get gone and into 4th place. Now he's 6.5 seconds back, so he's got to get on with it, with Rakita now dropping a second back, and that might just be for the best, because Rakita, if he can get himself into a bit of a rhythm, he'll still look to have a good opening stint. Obviously, you know, you've still got your other drivers to come in. He'll look to have a good opening stint, but he isn't giving up, is he? Dahmer hasn't quite got away so far. And Rakita now might fancy 4th place again. We'll keep an eye on that, with the last of Vos now 10 seconds off the back of this, but 4 seconds clear of the chasing pack, which now comprises Hopert in the Mustang, who's a further 5 seconds ahead of Phantom, with Stewart in the BW Motorsports BMW entry, having fallen back significantly. He must have hit a bit of trouble, because now he's got Leo Schumacher behind in the sim racing team KEK McLaren. The car number 16 entry is now on the back in 10th place of Stewart, who hasn't been quite that far back throughout the rest of the race. So I do wonder if there might have been a bit of grief between Hopert, Phantom and Stewart. You've got Donovan Lair now in the Lexus. It's not, the wet isn't the Lexus' favourite conditions, but he's hanging there gamely in 11th place, with Canoro in the BMW in 12th, fending off Pascal Vuta. So this is the pole sitter, Pascal Vuta, who looked quick early on but spun. He's having a look into the final corner. Is he going to try and set up the BMW? I wager he will set up the BMW down the straight. The Ford Mustang still has plenty of grunt despite the update. He's going to get to the inside now, and I suspect that the BMW will see position. The Beam, in fact, he already has going across the line. It's 0.5 but down the inside he goes, and I suspect this is going to be an easy one to complete. It is. It just blocks off the BMW's entry, and Pascal Vuta is now back into the pack, so to speak. He's 12 ahead of Canoro, and as well as that, I think he's passed Van Broek on the road as well, so he's up into 12th place, and certainly now out of the bottom 3, so to speak, of the GT3 entry. As we see now, I think that's Patrick Mider in the Lamaxo Sports McLaren in car number 67. It's currently in 25th place overall, but he is a good... He is, well, you see a couple of laps down. I'll just take a look here and see if I can see anything on the timing screens, but he is quite far back and behind the vast majority of the GT4 class, with GT3 leaders now starting to catch GT4s. Now I'll skip to this because I want to show you what I meant earlier in terms of traffic management. This can really make or break a stint, as we've got now behind two GT4s who are allowed to take the racing line. He flashes one, he goes round the outside of the Aston Martin, but he is on the marbles. The Aston gets out of the way rather bravely there, as Erkel Choglu now should now pick his way past the KTM that's in front. That's the KTM entry, who I think, I forget the name now, but that is how you do it. So you've got Hoffman there as well behind, and that is how you negotiate the two GT4s. GT4 continue battle. That's Yannick Durr in the KTM and Hall in the Aston Martin. They lose as little time as possible trying to get through, though, or trying to be lapped, trying to manage that traffic. But the leaders as well losing as little time as possible. So that's what we mean when we say about traffic management. They can really make or break your race. Sometimes you might just catch them in the wrong place, but if you can manage them like that in terms of, you know, making sure there's a bit of compromise from both drivers, you can easily get through unscathed. Got Hoffman now still half a second back, with Maserat having caught a little bit, as you'd expect, obviously going around into the final sector, going around the final corner, with Maserat in relatively clear air, but he'll now hit that traffic if he hasn't already in the Ferrari, going into the Dunlop hairpin. So as he's just, I think, past the two battling KTM and the battling Aston Martin. Yeah, again, 4 seconds. He's caught them right in the first sector. I think he caught them in the loop, the Grand Prix loop they put in about 20 odd years ago. He's caught them there. So that has rather evened itself out. What we're looking for now is more GT4s to try and pass. It's Erkel Choglu and Hoffman, and they've caught them just on the lead up to a long straight. Now, will the, let's think the McLaren there, car number 5, it's he's managed to slide himself out of the way, and that's easy enough. And Hoffman now fancies a look at the lead. I don't think he's going to get it because there's not much of a braking zone here, but he's slipstreaming now. Does he go to the inside? He doesn't. He stays at the slipstream. Is he going to force a mistake from Erkel Choglu? No is the answer, because Erkel Choglu a little bit tight in the second exit. He got a little bit deep, but I think he's going to hang on. Hoffman tries to run around the outside of the Porsche, who's got better traction, being a Porsche rear-engine car, but I think the Beamer is going to hang on for the moment. Now, is Erkel Choglu going to take to the inside? He's been cooling his tyres off enough recently, but he doesn't take to the inside, and Hoffman now is going to have to go around the outside if he wants to lead. Erkel Choglu goes to the inside in the Beamer, and does he go deep? He does. Is the Porsche going to capitalise? He does. Hoffman now goes round the outside. Is he going to take the lead? He's got the high ground for the moment, but the BMW can run him out wide. He doesn't. He takes the shorter route and holds on into turn 3 for the lead. Excellent action in the first half an hour of this, I remind you, a 10-hour race, but that doesn't seem to bother the two drivers here as they try and take overall lead early doors. The Porsche, I think, clearly the quicker car, kind of realising that at the moment the traffic or the track conditions won't stay like this, and he's got to make hay while the sun doesn't shine. Hoffman now tries again going into full curve. That's not going to work. There's a car off there. We'll pick that up a little bit later on. As Erkel Choglu now takes the outside. Is he going to... He's not going to need to defend there. Just takes the normal entrance, and that is the attack of Hoffman done for another day. Done for another lap, sorry. We're just looking to see who's got the fastest lap here. It's Hooper in the Ford. Now, he's going great gun since he's got past traffic. He's caught Elias de Vos, and he's in fact passed Elias de Vos for 6th place in GT3, and that, I think, is going to stay a rather permanent pass, because De Vos has got a lot of damage, as you can see on the front. I think they'll repair that when they come in. You'd be mad not to over the course of 10 hours. And Hopert now is going after Rakita in the Ferrari in front, who has finally been dropped by Stefan Dahmer's Porsche for Schwitzer Motorsports' second entry. We're going to go to GT4 now, as the Spanish entrant here, that's Jose Garcia in the Velocity Racing Team Mercedes. And as soon as we get to that, he climbs over the curb and loses the back end, and that will give plenty of encouragement to Irish, who's a bit of a specialist in the Mercedes GT4, lurking, looking for a way past the Spanish entrant. It's an all Mercedes top 3 in GT4. That's Loic in the Gridline Motorsports Mercedes, car number 222. He's got a bit of a lead now over Nussi. Nussi, who I think called a bit of strife earlier in the yellow and green Aston Martin. That is, you can see there, plenty of damage to the front end. So that he has certainly been in the wars, looking a little bit dog-eared there in front of Kopsch's, Stefan Kopsch's Schwitzer entrance Chevrolet Camaro. Now that's in 5th place. This is going to be a fight for 4th for a little while, whilst then Kramer, who had that drive-through, didn't leave for being out of position in the on the grid as they started the race. A further 30 seconds back as GT4 gets a little bit spaced out with we've already had the first pit stop as the McLaren entry, car number 45 in the Apex GT, has been replaced now by Goat, the Goat, I'm sure. They've got 8 pit stops left. You can see that because the number 8 is in the yellow or amber block there next to the driver's names. As we see now, who's that going off? That is not Goat, that is Nussi, who's gone off, and he's now been passed by Stefan Kopsch. That is a position change for 4th in GT4. And Kramer, he does drop behind Goat, but that's not really his race, and that's fine. And then you've got Nussi in the Aston Martin, who is, that car looks a bit of a handful to drive. I suspect an early stop may be in the offing for the Effect Motorsport Aston Martin. Come in, get some tyres, get that damage fixed, because I suspect that will be slowing him down to quite some degree. We're going to look now at the lead in GT4. That's Irish, who's still only 0.3 of a second behind Garcia's Mercedes, with the third Mercedes of Loyek in the Gridline Motorsport entrance a further second back, 2 seconds back, hanging on to the back of the lead duo. And I suspect that this one will run and run and run through the first stint. Irish, normally an excellent overtaker, has had a chance yet, has he, to pass Jose Garcia in the Mercedes, the Velocity Racing team, which is brown and silver, I think, brown and white entrance. Is certainly proving a bit of an obstacle for the usually immovable object, unstoppable force that is Irish in that Mercedes now, car 404. Only half a second behind, consistently only half a second behind, but it's just about waiting for that opportunity to come knocking. So in Choclu now, we're going to go back to the lead for GT3, which I think remains the same. The overall lead, Hoffman still staring at the back of that BMW, certainly very familiar with the Bavarian marks and back end at the moment, with Erkel Choglu in the British entrance 414 MSA racing team, certainly doing a stellar job to hold off the advances of the Porsche. Maserati still only 3 seconds behind, a little half spin earlier, but he's got no issues there as he passes the GT4 5th place driver of Nussi. The GT4 comes back at him. That won't go down very well in the Ferrari, and then I think wisely he backs off as Nussi there acquiesces. Let's say he cease and desist the defensive action. That he realised eventually trying to race the GT3 perhaps not the wisest thing to do. You've got Rikita then behind Stefan Dahmer. Dahmer now hasn't really caught the top 3, but he's certainly dropped the Ferrari of Rikita now in the 51 entrance Virtual Pro Racing team. That can still do some damage a little bit later on. It's in a really good position at the moment, despite the fact that the pace hasn't been stellar. You know, you're only 15 seconds off the lead in the first half an hour. Plenty of time to catch that with with just 9.5 hours left to go. Still incredibly wet at the moment. We've still got half an hour at least of heavy, solid rain to come. And I think that might just influence how the drivers go. If you go another half an hour and it still isn't abating, then you might just look to keep the wets on that you've got, keep them cool, and just take fuel. It will save you a little bit of time and get you a bit of track position, and as long as you can manage those tyres, you should be fine. Some drivers might switch to a new set of wets and try and see if they can come through, but it has proven to be a bit difficult to overtake so far, so that would certainly be a bit of a gamble. Now, looking at Hopper, who's got the fastest lap at the moment, the MSA entrant 415 Ford Mustang, currently 11 seconds off the car in front because of a bit of action early on lap 1. I think you can see there by the side of the car that he's certainly been in the wars, but he's now built a decent gap to Elias de Vos, who's no slouch with his damage. If you look at the front end mangled on that Ferrari, you can see that he's certainly been in the wars as well. but they're a further 20 seconds ahead of Stewart, who's had a bit of a torrid time, and he's going to very quickly drop to ninth place, with Pascal Vota going round the outside of the Ford Mustang. He's been making steady progress. He doesn't quite manage to land the pass there as he goes a little bit too wide, especially in the wet. There's going to be no grip out there, and he'll sit behind the BMW for a little while. We'll stay with this now as the BMW, who's been slowing up slowly but surely. Certainly got a bit of a fight on, and certainly has been getting his elbows out so far in the first race. As we've got Stewart now in the BMW, just fighting. He's been fighting with a lot of drivers. You've got Schumacher behind, and Lear only 4 seconds off the pace there as well. It's a difficult one for the BMW, because you know that your pace isn't quite there, but you don't want to stop too early. He does go wide, and that allows Vota down the inside for 8th place going into the Dunlop curve. A little mistake there from the BMW, and that is all the Mustang needs, provided he can get it stopped on the brakes, and he does just about. He went past the apex slightly, but he got it all stopped in front of the BMW, and that is P8 for Pascal Vota. The pole sitter, I remind you, look at the gap between him, the car in front. That's how much time his mistake earlier in the race cost him. We say mistake, we didn't see it, but there's no ill effects on either of the two cars in front. At the front, so to say that there's been any contact, but Pascal Vota won't worry about that for the moment. He's 45 seconds thereabouts off of the lead, coming through some GT4s, but he is back into 8th place, having earlier been last in the GT3 challenge. So Pascal Vota now in 7th place, ahead of Stewart. There's been some strife, I think, for another GT3 entrant. We're just going to see what's happened there. I think it's Maida who's dropped back as well. We've only got 25 runners, so there's some connection issues somewhere. Who's that there? Is Erklin Choglu and Hoffman are doing okay. You've got Mazarat and Dharma in 3rd and 4th, with Rakita in 5th and DeVos in 6th. We're trying to find out who has dropped out. Someone's dropped out. We'll go back a little bit later on and try and find out where that is, as we try and see now on the timetables who's dropped out. If we go to GT3, to give you a bit of an update here now, it's myself that's showing there. It's no, we can't see what's happened. We'll find out a little bit later for you what's happened. I'm sure we'll go back into the Discord, and someone somewhere will tell us where we're at now as we go into, I think that's where are we now? We're back with Erkel and Choklu, just going through some GT4s, and that is Irish. That's a change for the lead. Irish has just got past Jose Garcia for the lead in GT4, and that's just as the GT3 cars come through. That's what I said about traffic management with Jose Garcia still fighting around the outside. Is he going to make it last? No, he isn't. Irish has got that blocked off now, going into this chicane at the end. Now Jose Garcia goes to the outside. Garcia goes to the outside there, side by side, wheel to wheel. There's going to be a brave man there. There's contact, and I fear that was predictable. Further contact there, but he does make it last. Excellent action here now as he then blocks off going into the final corner. There's a GT3 car in all of this as well, and I think Irish has been forced to accept defeat there. The Ferrari goes past now, and is he going to pass the GT4? He will, and that might just open up another chance for Irish to go past. You've got Jose Garcia now in the lead once again, and I think he's going to keep it just for the moment. The German there in the second Mercedes won't be very pleased. Find out a little bit about that later on, but Irish there being forced out the hard way, going around the outside into the chicane. Jose Garcia, he wanted first place back in GT4, and that's exactly what he's got. Excellent racing between the two, and excellent action only half an hour into the race. So let's go back as well, I think. Yeah, the track's just starting to come to the BMW. It might well be that it's increased rain is actually probably cooled the track down, which might improve his performance, because you've got certainly fewer pressure issues. He goes down the inside of the Cayman there, the Cayman gets out of the way easy enough. I just wonder if the track started to come to him. I know they've just hit a little bit of traffic, but I do wonder if the track has started to come to him just that little bit. We'll see now whether or not there's been any further changes there. We've got Hoffman now 1.4 seconds back. We'll keep an eye on the gaps there. Then it's the further 3 seconds to Mazarat. Mazarat obviously getting involved with the GT4 runners. I think the GT4 drivers battling for the lead, as they should do. It's just bad luck, but I think they might have spaced this out just a little bit. Stefan Dahmer's now caught a second on Mazarat as well, but he's still to get past those two leading GT4s. I think we'll go back to those shortly because he's just in the middle of them both now. As we go, that's Garcia now. Just runs slightly wide there as the Porsche comes past. He just about keeps it, but that is going to provide further encouragement, I think, to Eresh. Eresh now with Loki, I think, or no, Lokita in 5th place as well. As the leader of GT4 goes wide, Garcia goes off, and that is going to hand an easy lead to Irish. Irish now, has he got the chance to get the gap that he wants? He's got already a second on as the rival. He's dropped to 3rd place, I think. He has dropped to 3rd in class as Irish now takes the lead. He's dropped to 2nd just in front of Loic. Loic is just in the background there, and Jose Garcia has handed Irish the lead. Bit of a needless mistake there as Irish now lets the GT3 car go through, slams the door shut on Jose Garcia. Garcia will have to go again, this time from behind Irish. This will be a race-long scrap, I fancy, as he does kick the back end out. Again, the GT4 Mercedes struggling there in the hands of Jose Garcia as he's got another wiggle on there, and I think Irish might just start to stretch his legs now. They've got some more GT3 cars coming up, but after Rakita, it's a bit of a gap there to DeVos, 16 seconds, which will be about 2 laps. And that's a bit of a chance there for Irish to get gone. Irish now in the lead of the GT4 race. That's excellent news for Schwitzer Motorsports' primary GT4 entry, the car 404 Mercedes AMG. Now we've got as well. Let me just see if there's a further battle. And Hoffman has caught up, I think, a little bit more. It's 4/10 of a second in the last lap, so it tells me that I think it was traffic related rather than tyre related. And you've got Hoffman now 1.3 seconds back, a little bit of cooler air now, I think, for the Porsche to get his stint done. Now, will he catch the back of Erkel? I very much fancy that he will at some point. In fact, yeah, he's got 4/10 of him just in the second segment. Porsche clambering over the curbs. He climbs over the curbs too much, and he starts out. Does he go into the pit lane? He does not. He was just over the commitment cone. I think he'll be okay there. Kicks the back end out. Did incredibly well to save that. That could have been a needless pit stop or a needless pass through the pits, but they've survived. Hoffman loses a second and a half there, but crucially does not go through the pit lane. Drive through the pit lane at pit lane speed, I remind you. You'll probably lose half a minute, which would have lost him 3 or 4 places, but he's safe. He's 2.5 seconds off the lead now, but he is safe, and he's only got 2 seconds now to play with for the ever cunning Maserati in the Ferrari. There's car number 777, the NRW Performance Racing Ferrari. Been settled in 3rd place for a long time. I reckon he's been looking after his tyres and keeping things relatively calm ahead of the second. Well, he's very much into the second half of his stint now, but very much calm and measured and keeping the car in play for the rest of the race. 9 hours and 20 of a 10-hour race, I remind you. So conditions likely to change, and the track likely to change with it as the time gets later and later into the evening, and the drivers get more and more tired, as well as more and more acquainted with the track conditions. Hoffman's now got another 3:10, so when he isn't making mistakes, Hoffman is a lot quicker. You can see a lot quicker than Erkel and Chocolo in the BMW, but the BMW holds the ultimate joker of being in the lead at this moment in time, and track position is proving to be key in GT3 competition so far. Irish now does look as if he's got a little bit of a gap over Goat in the GT4 or Garcia. I was wrong there. It's just some GT3 cars coming through. As Irish now powers on to the second sector. He's got about a second on the GT4 driver, which is Garcia. You've got Goat coming through there. Now he passes him for what was 14th overall, and but obviously it means nothing in terms of classes, because Irish obviously is leading the GT4 class, and his race is with Garcia. So 13th and 15th dispersed in second. Loic's dropped off just a little bit, hasn't he? He's now 5.8 seconds, even with the shenanigans a little bit earlier on. It's 5.8 seconds off of the lead 2 in GT4, with Stefan Kopsch in that usually badly behaved Camaro. He's managed to tame it so far. They're now in 4th place. And it's a strong run, really, for Schwitzer Motorsports. 4th entry, the second of the GT4 entries for them. And I suspect that he'll be keeping that there for a long time to come. If they don't hit trouble, there'll be a bit of a spoiler. You've got Nusi in the Aston Martin in 5th place, ahead of, that's the GT3, I think it's Pascal Voter, it might well be. Just have a look and see, it is car number 444, and the two drivers do just about negotiate the final corner. Starting to see a bit more of a dry line come through, aren't we? So that's the Mustang going past them now. He is is he going down the inside of the GT4? So that must be Loyek as well. God, catches him at the wrong moment, doesn't he? And that is a pass for 4th place in the... Struggling to see, where's that? No, it isn't. It's Durr. It's the lapped car. Excuse me. It's Adrian Durr in the Gridline Motorsport lapped car. It was Hoopert who had, I think, disconnected. They're now in 26th and last. Oh, it was such an incredible recovery, wasn't it, for the 415? It gone to the back. The one thing is they have at least managed to fix the damage, but they've gone to the back, hadn't they? They started well, had drama on lap 1, they were coming back through, and they're 3 laps down trying to get the car back in. That's pretty much race over for them. There's not much they can do from there. As we're starting to see a few more drivers come in, so we've got Visa now driving the Jamaica Connection McLaren, and the KTM, the 292 KTM, is now being driven by Hodek for Dimit Ernaplan in the car 292, so they're towards the back end of GT4. Don't expect that to stay there for much longer. They were running in the middle of the pack of GT4, weren't they? About sort of 7th and 8th. As we see now, we've got Malizia in the Porsche Scuderia 5 Racing. A little bit of a beat-up Porsche Cayman, isn't it? Currently running in, I think that's 8th place, with Maida obviously going through now. Patrick Maida in the Lomaxo Esports has had a bit of a torrid first stint, hasn't he? He's got past Kramer, which you would expect being GT4. He's got 33 seconds to the next car in front, which is another GT4, and he's a further 2 laps off the pace, isn't he, of Goat in the next GT3 car, with Goat having already pitted. So going to be a bit of a struggle for Lomaxo's entrant there. The Esports, the Lomaxo Esports first entrant, car number 67 in the McLaren. It's going to be a long way to come from there, isn't it? So as we now flick over to Nusi, who's in the Aston Martin, having been lapped by a GT3 car a little bit earlier on, 3.5 seconds behind Stefan Kopsch in the Camaro. And as we can see now, GT4 does have a bit of a gap, doesn't it, now, brewing at the top, but Irish stretching his legs 2.2 seconds clear, and I suspect that that's how it will stay, at least for a little while, whilst Irish is at the wheel of that Mercedes. Loyeg still, though, not proving to be much of an issue for the cars in first and second in GT4. So I think it's between the top 2, certainly, although you cannot count out either Gridline or Schwitzer. Certainly the top 2, Velocity Racing and Schwitzer's first GT4 entry, certainly making the early running so far. We've got now a bit more connection issues. Certainly a lot of ping there for Stewart in the BMW Motorsports entrant, car number 102, the purple BMW. Connection issues, but he's still there and fighting. You've got Vota now having cleared Stewart. He's now on the way to catching DeVos. Elias DeVos does have issues, obviously, with the damage at the front end. It probably looks worse than it is, but it can't be making the Ferrari comfortable to drive. Puts a wheel out wide, but it's a bit of a lonely 6th place, and you can get this in endurance racing in that you don't quite know, unless it's strategy related, you don't quite know where some drivers are as the gaps start to space out. At the moment, all of the top 12 haven't stopped, so we have a pretty good running order at the moment. But as things strategy starts to shake out, as we see, and that's Hoffman now, he's dropped back to 3rd. Maserati has got past Hoffman in the Porsche. Although the Porsche looked a little bit shaky, didn't it, when it was being driven over the limit, but Hoffman now has dropped back to 3rd behind Maserati. Maserati now up into 2nd and looking to take the challenge up to Erklin Choglu as stretch his lead. 4 seconds it was at the line. We're now going to complete the first sector. What is that going to be for the German in the BMW? Now, Erklin Choglu, who has Turkish heritage, is certainly leading the lights here. And he's 4 seconds clear of Maserati 2, with Maserati now a further 4/10 of a second clear of Hoffman. And I think that is going to be the three, isn't it, at the moment, with Erkel, Choglu, Maserat and Hoffman all covered by 4.5 seconds inside 45 minutes. We'll start to see these coming into the pits within the next sort of 15 minutes, I would have thought. You've got to get 9 pit stops done, effectively 1 every hour, on the hour almost every hour, until the race finishes. So, as we see now, Maserat starting to stretch his legs a bit over the Porsche of Hoffman. Hoffman, who was running for so long, he looked the quickest car on the grid, didn't he? He looked so much faster than Erkel and Choglu. Where has that gone wrong? We'll find out, I'm sure, as the drivers chat a little bit in the Discord amongst themselves. We've got now Rakita has still sticking on the back of Dharma, isn't he? Rakita, we're sort of written him off a little bit earlier on in terms of pace. He's in a good position, but his pace hasn't been that stellar. He's still two seconds off. I know that's a GT4, but he's 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds off of Stefan Dharma in the second of the Porsches in the top 4, 2.6 seconds, and I suspect starting to mount a bit of a comeback now. Okay, so picking this up, we're seeing now Pascal Vota's got 15 seconds to catch up to the boss. I'll take a look at the lap times shortly, but Vota now back up into 7th and certainly now beginning to repair some of the damage from a little bit earlier on, of course, to his race. So with that off and the opening laps, really, 14.8 seconds, that gap will come down and down and down as the boss nurses the issues that he's got. Now we're behind the leader of GT4, that's Irish. They'll get out of the way. He just pulls to the right hand side, and I suspect that Vota will go down the inside. Irish isn't giving it up so easily, but then the GT4 does not have to compromise anything. It's always to the GT3 to pass the GT4 safely. The GT4 has no reason to get out of the way. He doesn't. But there's a little bit of common sense at play here. Don't make it too difficult. Make sure that the GT3 is easy. It can pass easy with the GT4 not losing too much time. And that is exactly what Irish has done. It's been expert in traffic management for both him and Garcia, to be fair. They've been the leading lights in that. But Irish now 3.5 seconds ahead of Garcia. So just going to run you through now the lead. You can see for yourself. You've got Erkel and Choglu in the lead, 3.5 seconds ahead of Maserat. Maserat has a Porsche of Hoffman right behind him for Bremsbach and Schwitzer team entrance. The car number 100, 6th of second, he wants second place back. Stefan Dharma a little bit further back in the darker blue, midnight blue and yellow Porsche, with Rakita there for Virtual Pro Racing Cornero in 5th place. Elias de Vos a long way back in 6th at the moment, a good 20-25 seconds back in that beaten up Ferrari, the Hispania Racing Nexus Junior team, which does take inspiration from HRT, judging by the badge on SimGrid. With then, you can see Pascal Vota's taken another second out of him just this lap. Gone the pole sitter earlier, who had issues on lap number 2, to drop all the way to the very back. Stewart in the BMW has had an eventful first hour, hasn't he? Seems like we've never really got away from him fighting somebody. He's currently in 8th place ahead of Leon Schumacher in for KEK Sim Racing team. Donovan Leyer in the South African Logistical Nightmare Racing, Sniper Racing entrant, the Lexus. Easy for me to say when it's that small. He's currently in 10th ahead of Von Broek for Lamaxo Esports, his second entrance, and Canoro for Prestige Worldwide Racing in the BMW. And Goat is the last, I think, on the lead lap for McLaren. He's in the Apex GT, but they have made another stop. So it does look like they've got a little bit of damage there, so I think there's been some contact somewhere. We'll find out a little bit more about that later on. It's car number 5 has spun off, I think. He's just got back going again, but there was some yellow flags. It's Kramer who had that drive-through, didn't he, right at the start for being out of position, but they've still done really rather well to get, what is that, 6th place in GT4, despite that extra trip through the pit lane, especially so early on when it's so difficult to then catch up and get back into the race. You're going to be the first person to come across a load of GT3 drivers coming through. He's done rather well to get that NRW Performance 5th entrant. So some have got five entries here. The NRW Performance McLaren is doing rather well to be in the mix. You've got then Hall for WUGA Racing. That is the American entrant in the Aston Martin. Currently in 7th place ahead of Malizia, Herdek and Pfizer in the Jamaican Connection team. Adrian Durr, who couldn't start earlier on today, so has taken a bit of a... I think they're 2 or 3 laps down now. We'll get that come through. But Adrian Durr had a lot of trouble getting that car to start, so bit of a non-race already as far as they're concerned. And finally, Hupert. Hupert's had a bit of dramas on lap 1 to drop him towards the back of the GT3 field. He fought back excellently to come back through the field, and unfortunately it's all gone wrong. There was a connection issue which put him right to the very back in the final GT3 entrance, and now it's just a case of trying to see what he can get, trying to see what he can salvage with the MSA Racing team. That team already now with a race that's pretty much written off, and I've been in that position before, and you kind of, especially for the drivers who had their race ruined before they got in, which is kind of what's happened here due to the connection. There's a part of you that wants to just sort of give up, phone it in, but then there's another part of you that wants to show exactly what you can do. And the motivation there for Team MSA is there's still 9 hours of racing to go, so there's still a bit of time for them to maybe salvage a top 10 if others have trouble. That's the only saving grace. We did this, I remember doing it for a 6-hour race, but before I got in the car, knew that it was going to be hopeless and I was going to gain at most 1 place towards the very, very back, and for 2.5 hours just simply drove around angry, trying to find out what's going on. I'm sure that might be the case for Hopert and his teammates in the MSA Racing team, who had looked phenomenally quick once they got into some clear air, and we'll see how that progresses later on as they go past the second GT4 entrant of Garcia, currently second in GT4 for Velocity Racing team. Just dropped off the back now of ARS, and the ARS has got that gap out to 4 seconds. A bit of an expert in terms of managing the race, isn't he? We've seen it before so many times here and in other leagues where he'll wait and wait and wait for a mistake, and once you make one, he's gone. He's through he goes, and then he just starts to gently stretch away. That's what's happened in GT4, and I suspect that's a real asset for Schwitzer Motorsport's 3rd entrance. We're going to go to the lead of GT3, which is starting to close up again, isn't it, with Chilid Choglu in the lead, but he's only 2.9 seconds clear of Maserati in the Ferrari, with Hoffman still 9/10 behind. It feels like Hoffman hasn't really spent any part of this race not close behind somebody. Had a bit of a slide, didn't he, when he was attacking Erklin Choglu, and that put him back a little bit. There was further issues, which now has put him back behind Maserati. It's not something that we saw, but Maserati in the Ferrari is on a charge. So we'll keep with this in just a second. I'm going to take a quick break, and I shall be back with you in a couple of moments. Okay, welcome back to the coverage for what's going to be almost the second hour. We're only 3 minutes away for the second hour of this 10-hour race. Nearly 10% of the way through. Bit of a long slog, this, isn't it, for the drivers? Now, Erklinchoglu on his 28th, 1.7 seconds now ahead of Maserat. It seems like Erklinchoglu has seen off all before him, hasn't he? With Hopeth a little bit earlier on, the Ford of Pascal Vosa and Hoffman in the Porsche, who's now currently in third place. Is he going to have to see off Maserat now? We've got a few more drivers coming into the pits, with De Vos having come in for the Hispania racing team. Probably needs to get that damage fixed as much as anything else. Get some tyres on. It's still a wet race, isn't it? So still plenty of water out there. So in terms of your tyres, you're probably going to stay on wet. It's just whether or not you change them. Now, we've got, as well as that, I think you've got the McLaren of Go. He's been in a little while, so they had a tactical early start, which might pay dividends for them a little bit later on. Get into some, I say clear air, you're going to come into across some GT4s, but come out of the foreign line, fix some damage, and then just start to elongate your stints from there. You've got Stefan Dama, who's now got the fastest lap in the Porsche, starting to mount a bit of a challenge, 8 seconds off of the back of Hoffman. Hoffman now 2 seconds off of the back, and for the first time, really, relatively clear air. Not in clear air, on the other hand, is Maserat, as Erklinchoglu now, that's Nussi in the Aston Martin in GT4. Erklinchoglu makes a bit of a mess of trying to pass him there, a little bit of confusion between the two drivers, and that leaves Maserat right on the back. The Ferrari's not the strongest in a straight line, but it's no slouch either. Now, slipstreaming his way behind Erklinchoglu, the gap, 0.3 of a second. Is he going to make a move down the inside, Maserat? No, he isn't, because Erklinchoglu covers that off, but there's a GT4 driver in the way, and is that going to impact things? No, the GT4 is not getting out of the way. He just moves to the... No, he doesn't. He's still in the way there. No real indication of whether he's going to get out of the way. Obviously, no obligation for him to get out of the way, and that's a little bit irresponsible there, though, because he does let one driver come through. The other drivers follow in. There's a little bit of contact, but they survive. But Maserat now is going to have a go at Erklinchoglu. Now he opens the he doesn't quite go down the inside there. I thought he was going to have a look at a late lunge, but it's always a brave call to go down the inside into the Ford curve chicane with a relative lack of braking. Now as they go down into the Dunlop hairpin, another real follow the leader corner. Is he going to be able to make a bit or force a mistake? No, he isn't going to force a mistake, and that is position save for the moment there for Erklinchoglu in the BMW. As I said, he's seen off all before him so far, and that's another one to put in the wins column, the victory column for Erklinchoglu there, with Maserat now still having a look as they go into the Schumacher S's. I think he's going to just pull out of that one now. 0.3 of a second though, still behind the gap. He can see him, he can smell him, but can he pass him? That's the question. The Ferrari certainly looks like it's got more grip. It does look like the BMW might have taken a knock here and there. Coming up on the back of another GT4 driver. That's car number 1. That's Malizia in the Porsche Cayman, who is towards the back, so might be able to get out of the way relatively quickly. There's another GT4 in the way before, though. And that is... Who's that there? That is... as he holds him up again. So is that going to bolt the BMW? The GT4 driver there, I think that's Loyek in the 222. It is in third place in GT4 before they get to the Porsche Cayman. It bolts the BMW, but I don't think the Ferrari's going to have enough legs going into turn 1 once again. Maserat now goes around the outside as Erklinchoglu goes defensive. Has he gone too long on the brakes? No, he hasn't, although Maserat does try to cut back up the inside. That's not going to work because he'll be on the outside for turn 2. And that's another case of GT4 drivers there proving a bit of a pest there for the leader, as is their right. They've got no reason to get out of the way, as more contact with the GT4 driver for Maserat forces the car number 1, that's Malizia, out of the way, and then these two can resume their scrap. But look at this now. Hoffman in the Porsche is only 1.3 seconds off the back of this lot, having negotiated the GT4 drivers a bit easier. Here's Hoffman now going through the Ford curb. Needs a good exit here, and I suspect he'll be less than a second off the back of this. Maserat now only a tenth behind. Erklinchoglu, meanwhile, having to fight to keep that lead. 0.4 of a second there, and yes, less than half a second off the back of these two now. Here's Hoffman. You've got Stefan Dahmer now behind, is 10 seconds back, so I suspect that his goose is cooked in terms of pace at the moment, getting past a few GT4 drivers, with Rakita now 7.7 seconds back, keeping himself wonderfully in play. Now, Vuta up to 6th place after that disastrous opening 5 minutes where, having led, he spun off or had an incident somewhere which put him all the way to the back. Now, he's 43 seconds clear of Schumacher in the McLaren, which has a certain potential 1990s ring to it. He nearly did join McLaren, didn't he, instead of Ferrari. So here's Vuta now. He is just going into the Dunlop curve. I suspect there's still quite a bit of distance. Right, there is 32.5 seconds. So we'll watch that going forwards as he starts to get to the seriously quick GT3 pairings. Further drivers now coming into the pits, with Van der Beek having gone into that only 7 stops, so 2 stops already for the Hispania Racing Junior Team Ferrari. So I wonder if they messed up a driver swap, but that is 2 stops in quick succession to keep them in play. He's behind Schumacher now on the road, but I don't think that's for position. I think there's a laps car within that, but we'll find that out as ACC starts to shake itself out. Maserati, meanwhile, has come into the pits as Erkelin Çoglu has lost the lead to Hoffman. So somewhere around there, we missed it, but Erkelin Çoglu has finally succumbed to pressure. Erkelin Çoglu now over 1.5 seconds behind Hoffman. Hoffman now in the Porsche has taken the lead, but we wait to see how this shakes out, with Rakita in 5th place as well, having also come into the pits. Is Maserati now taking his stop, looking potentially to hand over? We're over an hour into this, so looking to hand over, going into, or to another driver, going into the second stint. It's Vuta as well who's coming in, so we'll expect to see the Ferrari leave at some point shortly, as Stefan Dahmer still laps in that Porsche, car number 555, the second of the Schwitzer Motorsport entries there. You can see that by the fact that there is 2 chat tallies rather than 1 there next to their name. And let's see how this shakes itself out with the BMW now. Erkelin Çoglu, I think, finally losing tyres. He had been trying to call his tyres a little bit earlier on, and the back end does look a little bit mangled, doesn't it? So I suspect that had been a long time in coming. Now we've got Schumacher now officially a lap behind. I suspect that's all just it shaking itself out as we see Vuta, who's in, and Rakita, I think, leaving the pit lane now with Maserati. Now this is going to be pretty pivotal these next few laps in terms of this early shake-up. Maserati now is currently 4th place, which, when you pit on ACC, and the other drivers haven't, is normally a really good sign of where you're at. But Maserati has got to get going. He hasn't handed over the car, so it's not him. He's going now for the earliest stints of that team. So Hoffman now crossing the line. He's just gone past, I think that's Eresh, and that is once again Eresh with Garcia for company. Eresh getting the traffic at the wrong moment, and Garcia is 4 tenths of a second behind. That was 4 seconds at one point, with Eresh having only recently passed Garcia. So that will run and run and run. Çoglu now comes into the pit lane in the BMW. We will wait to see exactly where he comes out in relation to Maserati. Did Maserati change tyres? He did, but he's also handed over to Maxime Brunert in the NRW Performance Ferrari. So Brunert now takes a little while to update this, but Brunert, having gone off the back really of Maserati's excellent work, kept himself in play. Will that Ferrari now, having challenged for the lead a little bit earlier on, will he succeed in taking the lead? Erkelin Çoglu now is in the pit lane, so we wait to see. There's Dahmer now, he's second. He's behind, I think that's a lap McLaren there. That might be the 590 entry of Von Broich, or it might well be Meister in the 67, but we will double check that a little bit later on. Who's that there? That might well be Maida. Yeah, it is Maida in the... It says car 667, but it is car 590. Answers on a postcard as to why that is. Erkelin Çoglu now leaves the pit lane, and he's well ahead of Brunner. I wonder if Erkelin Çoglu, or whomever now is the incumbent in car number 414, I wonder if they took tyres. It doesn't really matter now, because Brunner's just run wide. Off the track he goes, rejoins relatively safely in front of the Mustang there. That might be... that's not Pascal Vuta. Who's that in the Mustang? That might be Hooper. It is Hooper, so not a factor in this race at this moment in time. So, let's have a look now. You can see who's made their stops by the fact that there is 9. So there's a max, there's a 9 mandated, or 9 mandated pit stops, 9 mandatory pit stops. You can see who started to make pit stops according to the number in the yellow block. If the number is 8, then obviously they made 1. There's someone there, since Van der Beek for the Hispania Racing team. They've made 2 stops, so that is 7 there. They've got 7 mandated stops to do. But that is where things lie at the moment. So you've got some who are going slightly longer on their first stint. So Hoffman, for example, is going to run and run and run. I suspect maybe just take a load of fuel, for example, burn some of that, and then maybe take some tires a little bit later on. That might be a way to go. If you're staying out a little bit longer, you'll get some track position. It's now Carlos in the 414, having taken over from the battle-hardened, I think it's fair to say, Ilkay Erkali-Joglu in the BMW. They're 12 seconds ahead of Gruner, who has just replaced the previous driver there, the name of which is not on the tip of my tongue anymore. That is Maserat, Jürgen Maserat, who of course put up such a stellar performance in the first stint. And you've got Fabio Travaglioli for Virtual Racing. So Rikita handed over to him. Travaglioli is one of the quickest drivers on this grid, and I suspect will start to make hay with that Ferrari. The Ferrari is one of his favourite cars, although he has not fixed the damage, so they've not seen fit to have changed that. Maybe it wasn't affecting the car too much. You'll hear, if you were here a little bit earlier on, you'll have heard me talking about how drivers are always talking now in these. They're all in the road separate little parties. They're always talking about how the track feels, how the car feels, what your tyre pressures are supposed to be, whether to take tyres, whether to just fuel only. All of that will be a factor into the decision making that you see here. So Travaglioli for the moment is currently in 5th place. He's about 18 seconds off of Gruner, about half a second off of what half a minute off of what the true lead would be. But I would expect Travaglioli to whittle that down, the Italian in the Ferrari, as Leon Schumacher now pits a little bit later on in the McLaren. So for the KEK Sim Racing, they're running about 9th or 10th. So towards the back end of the GT3 class, but still a very steady race, and still something that I think they can make an impact on a little bit later on. There's Felton now, who's officially 10 seconds off the pace, but we won't see exactly what way's up or down with that until a little bit later on. It's kind of a 37. That is Stein in the Aston Martin. Goes off at turn 1, we can see there, but he's back on, and away we go. No need to switch back to there. The lead for GT4. We've been here before, haven't we? They've just been lapped or passed by a GT3 car, and Garcia this time is attacking Eresh. Eresh, who for so long was the hunter, is now the hunted. He got 4 seconds clear of Garcia. I suspect traffic induced, and I suspect it's traffic induced that's seen them close back up together, the two seemingly inseparable Mercedes GT4 drivers. Car 404 is Irish in the third Schwitzer Motorsport entrance, the first of the GT4. They've got 2 in GT3 and 2 in GT4, with Garcia in 15th overall, second in the GT4 class, which is the one that they'll be caring about. Obviously GT4's roughly 8 to 10 seconds a lap slower, so no need to be competing with the GT3s. Patrick Minder a little bit further back. Obviously he's now passed them, so that's why the position's going to drop there. Stefan Kopsch in the Camaro. It's an impressive performance from Stefan Kopsch, because that Camaro, from experience, is not an easy car to drive, certainly not in the rain. So excellent work there from the Schwitzer Motorsport second entrant there. A little bit of damage too, so certainly battle-hardened car so far. And to be in third at the moment, having passed Loic. I know Loic's into the pits now, or has pitted, so that may shake itself out. But an excellent drive so far from the German in the Chevrolet. We're going to go to the lead now and just see how this is shaken out, because Hoffman's pitted and is in front of all of them. So you've got Carlos and Gruner now, with Hoffman having handed over to David Manifeld in the 100 Porsche entry. Hoffman got ahead now by 5 seconds or so of Carlos, so even when they were on older tyres and potentially lower fuel, but even towards the latter part of that stint, started to eke away. And Manifeld now, his task is to maintain the work done by Hoffman, who was at the sharp end and for most of it behind a driver. Didn't matter who it was, whether it was behind Erkali Choglu's BMW and then Maserat in the Ferrari, he was behind them. He's got ahead of them now towards the end of the stint, and now he's put Manafelt in an excellent position for Bremsbach and Schwitzer in the 100 Porsche to go on and maybe control this race. Still got Stefan Dahmer in the Porsche. I suspect that they might be... I know they've got 9 mandated pit stops, but there's nothing to say exactly when and how you should serve that. So I suspect that he might be running this out of fuel and then might be taking both tyres and fuel a little bit later on. Bit of an offset strategy there from the Schwitzer Motorsports second entrance. But will it pay off? You've got Manafelt now currently 49.9 seconds behind. And not anymore, because he does drop it. Does he hold it going into the first corner? He does, just about gathers it up on the runoff area. That's a bit of a warning, and that's one way to find out how the conditions are. So he'll be mindful of that going into the first corner. Again, for the future reference, he cost himself, I think, 2 seconds there. There's Carlos in the BMW, with now Gruner a little bit further back in the Ferrari as the drivers try and work their way through these new conditions. Manafelt now will be uber aware of the braking capabilities of that Porsche. Looks like it was on the downshift going into the first corner, where it just sort of veers off to the right as you leave the pits. You brake as that turns right, and sometimes in the wet that does spit the back end out, and that's what's happened there, but no harm done overall. A couple of seconds cost, possibly. He was 49.9 behind Dahmer. We'll see exactly where he was there. Now it's 1.3 to Carlos, so he's cost himself a couple of seconds to Carlos. With Dahmer now going over the start-finish line. Is he? Where is Dahmer? Car 999. Where's that gone? He's just ticked over. I think he's just crossed the line now. So we shall see exactly how much that's cost them. Carlos, meanwhile, 1.3 seconds behind Manafelt, who will have to just take a little bit of notice going into the first corner for future reference. Now, did incredibly well actually to gather it up. If you did miss it, as we nearly did, it was just as the track veers right going into the first corner, just as the cars exit the pit. He's on the brakes, downshifts a bit too aggressively, but he gathered it up. It spun, the back end came round, he gathered it up, it's fine. So Manafelt now is going to be, we'll see exactly where Dahmer is. It's 555, but it's listed as 999. That's not the most helpful from ACC, but what do you expect? Here is Manafelt now crosses the line, and he's 51.7, so that cost him 1.8 seconds to the leader, and it's cost him 2.5 seconds with Carlos having taken a further bit of time out of him to Carlos in car 414. Now this is the net lead for the moment, with Dahmer on a bit of an offset strategy, so we'll see how that plays out a little bit later on, with Gruner now 16.5 seconds back. I think Carlos is looking incredibly quick in the British entrance MSA Racing 414 BMW. Gruner now is 16.5 seconds back, with Travaglioli just crossing the line now, 14.5 seconds back, so he's starting to make inroads on the first Ferrari, the primary Ferrari in this race so far, Virtual Pro Racing. Just passes a GT3, I think that might have been one of the BMWs that had hit strife a little bit earlier on. That might well have been Bowman there. It is Bowman in car number 102. That entrant has had a little bit of bad luck so far, with Stewart getting his elbows out all over the show really for the first sort of half an hour. They're still fighting though. They are 12. There's a couple of cars in front of them, including the logistical nightmare racing, and I promise you that's what it says, even if it is so small. So they're still fighting for a top 10 finish. You've got Von Broich, who is still going in the McLaren. I think that's 591, even if it says 590. In the second Lamaxo Esports entrance, he's going for a top 10 behind the Lexus of Mbele, I think that is, in the early stint. We've got then Van der Beek, who's made one fewer stop than everybody else, but he is back in 13th in GT3. Meanwhile, back in GT4, you've got Irish, who's only half a second clear of Garcia. It's a bit of a familiar tale. The tale as old as time in this race now, with Garcia looking at the back of Irish, who's just been passed, I think, by Goat in the McLaren. That's in GT3. He's a few laps back, but they have just finally cleared him. So we've got at the moment Garcia and Irish. Neither of them are stopped. You do wonder whether one of them might undercut because they are fighting each other quite a bit. It's difficult to determine exactly who's the quickest, but it might be worth, as Garcia does take a look down the inside of turn 3. It's a bit optimistic, but he's got a GT3 McLaren now behind, and he does get a little bit loose. Again, there's a little bit tail happy as the McLaren comes through. The McLaren passes Irish as well, climbs the Mercedes GT4, and they're safely through. But you do wonder whether maybe one of these might want to undercut. I don't know how pre-planned the strategy is, but with Garcia literally almost pushing Irish out of the forecurve, you do wonder whether it might be worth one of these cars coming into the pits and seeing if they can steal a march that way. He goes around the outside going into the Dunlop. That won't work because Irish is a far too wily a character to fall for that. Indeed he does. Blocks a move and away they go. But you do wonder whether that might be, especially as we get to pit stop time now. We are in pit stop time with 8 minutes and 8 hours and 43 minutes to go. We're into pit stop time. It might be worth a stop here. You've got Stefan Koch still gamely fighting on in the Chevrolet. He's about half a second off of the lead, and he's a net 4th on the road, we believe, with Loyek probably or more than likely to pass him going into the second round of stops when they eventually get there. But Stein not close enough really to be a factor. In fact, it's showing he's 2 laps off. I wonder if that's 2 laps off of the lead or 2 laps off, I think, or 3 laps off of the car in front. So GC4 really rather spread out, which we expect sometimes it can be, especially with cars coming through, GC3 cars coming through and potentially causing incidents. But at the moment, the top 2 very much set in stone, or not, because Garcia has got a run on Arish coming out of the final corner. Garcia takes the lead. Arish isn't taking it lying down, though. Arish follows in the slipstream. He's going to try one round the outside because Garcia covers it off, and Garcia takes the lead for the moment, although Irish comes around the outside. Is he going to force his way through? No, he's elbowed just wide enough, and Irish takes a bit of a beating there in his home landing. He got a little bit loose off of the curb, off of the final corner, and that was all that was needed for Garcia to come through. And once again, Jose Garcia's back in the lead, and once again Arish is staring at the back of him. So we're going to now move, I think, to the lead as well. Carlos has taken the lead overall lead off of Manifold, who has been visibly struggling, isn't he? You've got Bloom in the second Schwitzer Motorsport car, who's come out in third ahead of Grunert. So Grunert's dropped, I think, 2 places at least from Maserat's second place a little bit earlier on. But Travaglioli now getting interested, isn't he, in 5th place. So you've got the first 4 cars after an hour and 20 minutes covered by about 15 seconds, 16 seconds there, with Carlos now getting on with it, building a lead in the way that Urkel and Choglu tried to do in the BMW. I think they might have made a couple of changes, especially to tyre pressure, because they were struggling with heat a little bit earlier on. Manafel 6.5 seconds back and has Bloom for company, coming up 7.5 seconds behind now in 3rd place. And Manafeld is just got to stay in there. He had such a run with Hoffman. Even if you're struggling a bit, and even if you come in a little bit slower, it's about staying calm, staying cool, and staying collected. I think, is that Pascal Filter coming through? It isn't Pascal Filter, it's the other Ford Mustang, which I think might be Hopert, still in the race. He's back up to 24th, and I think it's a bit of damage limitation. He might get in the top 12 if he carries on like this, because there are a couple of other cars who are a little bit slower than him, but he has got 2 more stops to do than Van der Beek and Hispania, for example. So we've got Manafeld in second, who's let Hopert go, and Bloom now in third. That's going to be the race for the moment. They're 7 seconds away, because I don't think Carlos is going to be caught at this stage. Grunert 2.1 seconds back in the Ferrari, car 777. He's just a little bit off it at the moment, but feeling their way in. It's so difficult when you're coming into a car where someone's been a lot more comfortable, a lot more confident, and you've got to get in the car and try and find your way around. But you're learning on the job, especially when you've got a couple of other drivers who get in and plug in and play, which is what Carlos has done out in the lead BMW. And it's always a little bit of a tough one for the driver who takes a little while to get going and find out where they're at, because then it feels like you chase. And that's exactly what it feels like here for Manafeld, and it's not a chase that is being successful so far. 7.5 seconds off the pace, with having emerged in the lead after Hoffman's good work a little bit earlier on. We can see now, try and see if there's any closer gaps. I suspect I know where I'm going with this, because it does look like now that Garcia has come into the pits. Now, he has come out, there he is, leaving the pit lane now. So, I mentioned earlier about potential undercut. Eresh now has got to use whatever pace is in those tyres, whatever grip he's got. Might be a case of perhaps he might have been saving his tyres. He's got the GT3 leader behind him as well. I think now it's just a case of get going. What has occurred to me, at least in part, is it might be that some drivers are going to do, or some teams are going to do a tyre change, driver swap, and perhaps a splash and dash. Doesn't look like there's anything in the rules about it. I've read them briefly. Doesn't look like there's anything in the rules about a 1 litre stop. With 9 stops to go, it might well be that you have to play cute and clever rather than do the traditional. And I wonder if that's what some drivers might do. It might be why Van der Beek, for example, has made 2 more stops than the cars around, or than some of the cars around, and 1 more stop than Von Broek and Bowman, for example. He isn't that far off the pace. I know the pace hasn't been bad in the Hispania team, but they're not that far off the pace. And I wonder if they might have done a bit of a sort of splash and go. We'll find out a little bit later on as things shake out and as the chat goes off. But it looks like the vast majority, apart from Maida in the Lamaxo Esports McLaren, which has had problems earlier on, and Mbele in the South African entrance in the Lexus, have made their stop in GT3. Relatively few drivers still to come in, I think, in GT4 as well. You've got obviously Eresh to come in, and Durr, who had a lot of problems earlier on in the race in terms of trying to get into the race, trying to start the race. He lost 4 or 5 laps trying to start the race, and well, to his credit, he's got past Schneider. Stefan Schneider has Jamaica Connection Racing has at least made 2 more stops, but to his credit, he's stuck in there. They may still get a result with Steinhauer now the next target in front. We've got the GT3 of, I think that's the Stricken Hoper. We'll just make sure to change that. It is Hoper, who's just past Eresh. Now, this is where Eresh needs to get going, because Garcia he might have fresher tyres, he'll certainly have a bit more fuel on board, and they'll certainly had a bit of a rest and reset for GT3, for GT4, and now we just need to see exactly what the times are doing. So it's going to be a bit difficult to follow GT4 just for the moment. We'll come back to that a little bit later on, as Unert has passed Daniel Bloom in the Porsche 999. I think that's the Schwitzer Motorsports second entrance. It is, and that is a change for position. So Gruner now very much settled in that Ferrari, having got past Bloom, and now back into 3rd place. That car, having been so long in the podium positions, is now back where it was, and he's now started to catch Manafeld, who is only 6.5 seconds up the road. Manafeld now, so the leader Carlos has crossed the line. Manafeld is 10.1 seconds back, so Carlos has built a lovely gap. It might be that they start managing it, especially with the rain still falling. I don't think there's going to be an awful lot of change in these conditions, certainly for the foreseeable, as it's not changed for an hour and a half. So, Bruno now, his task is to try and see if he can get in amongst the Porsche and try and see if he can force a mistake there and get back up to second with other drivers still to come in. That's going to be the target as they slowly start to build this race and the race starts to take shape. We're an hour and a half in nearly, and still it's anyone's race with Carlos, Manafeld, Gruner and Bloom the leading 4. So that is the 414 BMW, the MSA Racing entrance, the 100 Porsche entry, Bremsch, Back and Spreiser in the hands of Manafeld, with NRW Performance 777 Ferrari in 3rd, and the 999 at the moment. I will check this because I think it's car 555 that it's coming out as on the map, is the Schwitzer Motorsports second entrance. Those are the 4 to look out for at the moment. Travaglioni's dropped off a little bit in the Ferrari. The car number 41 Ferrari have been taken over from Wakita for Virtual Pro Racing, but do not count them out. Those are the ones to watch for at the moment. Pascal Falter, having taken himself out of contention a little bit earlier on, is starting to rebuild his race. We'll have a look at the 444 Mustang now just to see exactly where we're at here going into the Dunlop Hairpin. A bit of clear track in front. There's a couple of GT4s to deal with in probably the next lap or so, but once he's got past that, it's then him and Travaglioli. And when you're driving along, you can see some drivers go for the overall, some drivers go for what they're doing in the class, but you'll be able to see the live gap. If he's going for the live gap, he'll be able to see exactly where he's quicker and where he's slower. And psychologically for a driver, especially in this type of race, it's so valuable. Now, as voted 13.5 seconds off, so we'll keep an eye on that gap as it goes around. Blum 1.3 seconds off the grid. It hasn't exactly been dropped, has he? As they come up across some pesky GT4s, that might be the leader, Airesh. We'll just check that now. I think that's car 404. It is Airesh, so that will affect things at both ends as the Ferrari goes a little deep going onto the inside of turn 1. We have got a stop go for, who's that a stop go for? That is for the 590 McLaren, who's also 591. That is Von Broich for a, well, it's Seb as race control. Now that might be speeding in the pit lane. They've got another stop they've got another stop off, so that might be speeding in the pit lane one way or the other. But that is a 30-second stop go, and that is effectively a minute and a half added onto their race time when it comes to stopping and starting again with how ACC is. That's the BMW there of not Baldwin. Is that Canoro? It is Canoro in car number 66 for the Prestige World Racing, and he's now got a lapped Von Broich, who not only is a lap behind, but is also now going for another stop-go penalty, which is effectively an extra pit stop that you never wanted. They can't work on the car, and it does not count towards their official pit stops, but that, for Von Broich, is a bit disastrous for the Lamaxo entrance there. The Lamaxo Esports entrance, the second entry. It's gone wrong for both of them, hasn't it? You've got Lamaxo having had strife a little bit earlier on. I think they've not been able to get back in, and you've got the second entrance there as well. So you've got Maida as well, who has got back in, but a long way back. And you've got now Rust, who's been lumbered with a penalty, I suspect, by his teammate for speeding into the pit lane. So a bit disastrous there for the Lamaxo duo, but still a long way to go. They can save at least something from the race, even if they can't win it. They can save something from that race. We're looking at Airesh now. Still pretty difficult, especially with Rust there in the middle of them now, to see what the gaps are. That's what we're trying to do here. It's 15 seconds off of it. It doesn't matter because that's the Lexus in front. But we're just trying to see now whether, as he does come into the pits, here's where the GT4 lead is potentially going to be changed over, as Airesh now comes into the pit lane to make his first stop an hour and a half in. So I suspect this might either be another fuel and tyres thing, in which case he might come out a little bit further back behind Garcia, or he might short fill and just put some fuel in and come out in front to irritate and annoy the Spaniard. Garcia has not got out of the car, so it's game on again if Airesh does stay in. But we shall see now as the Mercedes, is in the pits. He's leaving the pits, so I suspect that might have been a... Is he? No, I thought it was moving away. It's just the way that it moves sometimes on there. It's not bobbling away as other cars come through. So we're now looking at Garcia again for the lead of GT4. Goes over the chicane. Looks all pretty comfortable so far. And still nothing from Airesh in the first of the Schwitzer Motorsport entrance for GT4. Although he is right at the end. Is he going to... He's not. I think Garcia's going to take the lead, isn't he? Garcia's now coming across the line. And here's Airesh now. Is he leaving the pits? He has now finished, but not enough. Garcia does take the lead. And Airesh, or whomever is now taking over the Schwitzer Motorsport entrance, is going to come back out, I suspect, with a 5 or 6 second deficit. Now, as they start to get into the race, you can see they're trying to find out where the grip is. Gets back into the race. I suspect that will grow again. But here's Garcia now. Garcia is in the lead for Velocity Racing Team, and I suspect that there's been a slight difference in strategy there in terms of what they've taken on. I know that Airesh went a lot longer, but I suspect that there might be a slight difference in terms of one maybe took tyres, which might explain the gap, and one maybe took a little bit more fuel. So we'll just see now. I suspect that's what, if I try and do it by the eye, that's about 8, probably about 7 or 8 seconds. Which is how GT4 cars tend to handle. We'll find out very shortly going into the Dunlop hairpin now. So that's Garcia is there, and we just wait. Here we go, and it's 7.5 seconds. So Eresh there, 7.5 seconds behind so far, and now we'll see whether or not the two strategies, which one works out best, and whether they begin to collide a little bit later on. Still out in the lead, and Bloom is back out on the back in GT3 of the Grunert, well, the NRW entrance Ferrari 777, driven by Grunert at the moment. And this seems to be probably a never-ending story in terms of the context of this stint. It was very similar in terms of Mazerat going after Erkli Çoglu and Hoffman a little bit earlier on. Now we've got Grunert and Blum having a bit of a scrap here for third place with Travaglioli. I said he was starting to not make, or wasn't making the inroads. He is now starting to make said inroads. 8.5 seconds off the pace now that he's got on top of that Ferrari. And what was 13.5 seconds is soon going to be a three-way battle for the podium just for the moment. Wuter, don't count him out either. 13.5 seconds behind in the Mustang, having been miles out of it at one point. He's now in 6th place, so, you know, this will start to close up potentially in the next 30 to 40 minutes or so. We'll stay with it for the majority before we hop off with 8 hours to go. We'll be back on a little bit later on. But Travaglioli now, 8.5 seconds back going through the Schumacher S's. And I suspect if these two keep battling as they go past, I think that's Eresh in the... no, that's not quite. That's Loic in the other Mercedes GT4. That's the third car, I think. That's car 110. And now we've got the Porsche having both gone through there. Half a second apart. I suspect Travaglioli's going to have a lot of interest in third place before this hour is out. See now the battle for third place in GT3 is where the eyes are at the moment. Eresh now in GT4 a little bit further back, 8 seconds off of the back of Garcia. They've got Rust in the middle of all of that, but that will change within the next couple of laps. Battle at the moment is Blum versus Gruner. Blum now 1 second behind the Porsche, and it's interesting here because You've got a lot of different strategies at play. The Porsche pitted an awful lot later than the Ferrari. The Ferrari was one of the first of the front runners in. And what that means is that they may be on slightly different tyres. We never see that. ACC doesn't provide that information. But what that means is that they'll be effectively in two different timelines, two different time zones for that strategy. Some will be maybe a third of the way through. So maybe the Ferrari and possibly the BMW might be a third of the way through what it is that they're looking to do. The Porsche, whilst they've all got to make 8 more pit stops, the Porsche might be maybe a quarter or a tenth of the way through. With how the endurance racing is framed and with how the different strategies converge, we won't really know until the end exactly what was the best way to go. But with the Porsche now, he could have either short-filled or he could have put tyres on and come back out and be there on genuine pace, in which case he'll have a tyre advantage even if he'll have some slightly heavier fuel. So there's so many different ways that this can play out now, from maybe not that these two might be stuck together and they might end up fighting for the same piece of track all the way through, or it might well be. But with the way that the strategies are, it might well be that the Ferrari, can look after its tyres a little bit better than the Porsche. The Porsche, you have to have some pretty wacky setups to get the best out of it usually. Although it has got some excellent traction, that can also be a bit of a curse if it keeps digging the rear tyres in, all that weight going over the back. These are all things to consider. So the Ferrari is very much an all-rounder, and has been probably one of the strongest cars on the grid. But if he's, say, 5 laps in, I haven't been able to keep all the data, there's nothing there that's telling me exactly when they're pitted. If there's, say, even 5 laps difference, that can make such a difference on a wet track where, the track conditions could potentially be changing all the way through. and every lap is almost a little bit of an unknown. At the moment, it's been fairly consistent in terms of the way that the rain has fallen. It's been like this for the majority of it, and we'll keep an eye and see if there's any sunshine or anything over the horizon. At the moment, it's just solid rain, but it's not heavy enough to flood the track. So it means that you have to be a bit careful on what your pressures are. So we've gone past another GT, I think it's GT4 Aston Martin. I think this might be the American entry for who's towards the back, I think. Very well done getting out of the way. But for these two, for example, they stopped, a few laps apart, and so we won't know really who's got the advantage. What would be that in order to catch back up, they did a slightly shorter fuel stop. Would make sense then. It might get them back on track a little bit later on, for example. But that's the beauty of endurance racing, is that we won't really know. What we do know is that Travaglioli in the Ferrari and the Virtual Pro Racing entrant, the Car 41, is catching rather quickly. What was 8 seconds a couple of laps ago is currently now, it was 4.8 seconds. We'll find out exactly what it is as he crosses the line. It's now 4.5 seconds. So the battle for third place at this moment in time is the one to look at. We've got 15 seconds between the leader, Manifeld, who took over from the ever-feisty Hoffman, and then you've got Carlos there, who's continued the good work carried on by İlkay Erçelişoğlu in the leading BMW, car 414, currently 15 seconds apart with Brunner 9 seconds off the back of that pack. But here it is, because 7/10 of a second now separate third and fourth, and in fifth place he's taking at least a second a lap out of the cars in front, and has been for some time. So this is going to be the place to watch for the next 20 odd minutes, I would suspect. Leads of GT4 at the moment, they're still separated by a GT3 car. I wasn't expecting this, because it does mean that it's a bit difficult to track it. So about 8 seconds or so between Garcia and Eresh. We'll ignore Freeze in the Lamaxo Esports entrant, who has had a stop-go penalty after a speeding ticket a little bit earlier on. But it's GT4, that we'll come back to that a little bit later on. We've got Bloom now still 7/10 of a second off of the back of Brunner, with Travaglioli 4.6 seconds back now. As they come across some GT4 traffic, the Aston Martin couldn't really have been any less helpful to the Porsche. Very well negotiated by Bloom, who might have lost a couple of tenths, but very much battle lost, not war. And now 8/10 of a second there as they go into the final. It's a really short final sector, isn't it? I don't know why that is, but it's you've got most, if not pretty much half the track in the first sector, and then almost all of the second half in the second. I don't really understand what the third sector's for. Anyway, we digress. 8/10 of a second between Brunner and 1.2, obviously, with I think Nussi getting in the way in the Aston Martin. No fault of his own. It's just how it works. It's either Nussi or it was Stein in the Aston Martin, and we've got now, and that's where the Ferrari's getting all of his time, because he was 4.6 seconds off at the end of sector 2. At the end of the first sector, sorry, and he takes 1.6 seconds out of them in the remaining half of the lap. So that's where the Ferraris. We'll keep an eye on that now, because that's 3.1 seconds off the back of Bloom. Bloom now is officially 1.2 seconds off. I suspect that's going to ebb and flow. But Travaglioli is the one to watch here in this battle, as they will start to converge now. So Brunner doing a good job in third place, keeping the Porsche of Bloom at arm's length. Bloom, who was stopped a lot later, will therefore be, as we discussed earlier, on a different strategy. And as soon as I say that, that is the curse of the commentator, as Brunner now drives, he locks a brake. I think he got wide, runs wide, and that allows Bloom to go up the inside. They're side by side through the Schumacher S's. You want to be careful there, boys, because you don't want to have a contact there. They don't. Bloom goes around the outside, and that from Brunner is driver error. That's what that is. Unfortunately, curse of the commentators strikes once again, and what was third place is now fourth, having just got a wheel on the grass braking. He did well to gather it up as much as he did, to be honest with you, just off the track into the gravel. but the Ferrari, whilst recovered, is now a place down, and that's 4th place. Now Gruner and Blum are going to fight again, and here's Travaglioli now, only 3 seconds behind it was, now only 2 seconds. So it converges once again, as we've got now for 3rd place 3 drivers within 2.5 seconds, as Blum now for Schwitzer Motorsport takes on the mantle of the 3rd podium. They're side by side, are they? No, that's just the GT4 car. I think they're passing now as the Ferrari of Gruner 0.8 of a second now back, but he's got Travaglioli for company. Going into the first corner now, 1.4 seconds back, and that it is all change for the podium now. Blum is going to try and go, get away from Gruner. Gruner now still struggling behind that GT4, I think, is he? Yeah, he's just about got past him. But that is a disastrous lap, and it's an even more disastrous lap because he's just spun on the entrance to turn 3. Oh, disaster for the NRW performance. What was looking like a possible victory has gone now from not even a podium. They're now 5th place, and here's Pascal Vota now, who's just coming back to, I think there's about 4 or 5 seconds between them now as we wait for things to catch up. But Travaglioli up to 4th place, and he's now stalking Daniel Bloom in the final podium spot for Schwitzer Motorsport. And that is disaster once again for Grunert. Having gone off on the previous lap, he then spins it round and nearly backs it into the wall. And that, for 777 entry, the NRW performance car, is a real setback. What was looking like a win, a potential win, they're now not even in the conversation. They're now half a minute off the lead, and Grunert has got some work to do to try and repair that damage. Travaglioli, meanwhile, 2.5 seconds back so far, as Blum now tries to see if he can capitalise on that piece of luck. He'll say, thank you very much, I'm off, I'm gone. But can he keep it there, or will he be reeled in by that monstrously quick Ferrari? There's a McLaren there in GT3, he's not a factor, he's off. I think that's Freezy in the eSports car. A bit of a disaster for the 2 Lamaxo cars so far. 2 seconds now separates the podium. Excellent racing now with nearly 2 hours, but nearly 20% of the way through with 17 minutes to go to the hour. Grunert now is 6 seconds ahead of Vota, and Vota, he has a sniff of a top 5 after what was a disastrous opening lap. Goat, meanwhile, ended up in the Apex McLaren in 7th place. He's recovered well from what was a difficult start. You've got Schwab now in the McLaren in the KEK sim racing team. Easy for me to say. Recovering from Schumacher's good work as well. That's what was 10th place is now 8th. And Canoro in 9th place in the BMW is still going strong here now, isn't he? He's well, I know it says he's 1.7 seconds back. I suspect that is old news. Canoro now in the BMW in 9th place, with Van der Beek for the Hispania racing team having taken 2 pit stops, still in the top 10. It's all to play for here now with well, we'll go back to the battle for 3rd place, I suspect, because that does not look like 1.8 seconds now, does it? That isn't far away at all from being possibly within a second now, as Travaglioli goes into... Well, that shut me up. That's 1.9 seconds. So I'll ignore that and blame ACC. 1.9 seconds between the top, between 3rd and 4th at this moment in time. With Grunert now 7.5 seconds, stabilising the gap in the Ferrari. So 777 Motorsports now, or the NRW Performance, I should say. Where does it go now? How do you recover it? Well, you could get a bit clever on the strategy. Maybe you fill up the car when you change tyres. Potentially then you maybe take a couple of shorter stops. Pascal Vota now coming across a GT4 entrant easily through, and he's now 5.9 seconds behind, having looked, as I said earlier, like he was potentially going to be towards the back of GT3. Now Travaglioli 0.9. It's the second sector really, but that Ferrari really does ace it. It's a monster over those medium speed corners. And that's what's keeping the Italian now in play. It's been an incredible stint from the Italian now, as he's got to 25, or within 25 seconds of the lead car. Now, 1.1 seconds of Bloom recovered over the course of the final sector. The Porsche using its superior traction to gain a bit of time, no doubt. 8.5 seconds, as I say, back to 5th place, and it's just a case of head down and damage limitation now. We've got a pit stop here as Goat comes into the pits for the second time, I think. We'll just see if that changes itself, because it's early to have 3 stops in 8 minutes, well, with 8 hours and 14 minutes to go. We shall see whether that works out. I think it is just the 7th stop. Good pass by Schwab and the BMW of Canoro. Canoro, meanwhile, goes wide. Does that open it up? No, he's a little bit too far ahead with Go. It's still him in the McLaren, isn't it? Well, we'll see when it goes over the first sector or so, with the things not being fed to me live and certainly not updating live. Manafeld now 18.8 seconds. It's been an excellent stint, hasn't it, from Cars? We barely mentioned him, and that, I think, is a testament to just how quickly he's got away. It's now almost become a bit of a non-race at the moment between the lead Giros. Still got 8 hours and 13 minutes of this left, of which we'll be taking you through 4 of those at the very least, with Carlos now leading by 19 seconds and Travaglioli now not 19 seconds, not even 19 hundredths behind Bloom at this moment in time. That is nose to tail there between the two, as Bloom used the Porsche's excellent traction to get away, but the Ferrari, as we said before, is no slouch. They've got a GT4 car coming up as well. GT4, as Travaglioli tries to link to the inside to use the GT4 car to his advantage. He can't. The GT4 car, the KTM, stays wisely out of the way of Bloom anyway, but it does ball Travaglioli. No fault of his own, but the GT4 car spins. I don't know whether there was any contact there, but the KTM is now round the, I think that is Steinhauer for Demert Erneplan in 24th overall. I think he's just about in the top 10 for GT4. Don't know whether there was any contact, but that certainly blocked Travaglioli just for the moment, so we'll revisit that a little bit later on. Meanwhile, in GT4, I think Garcia's starting to stretch his legs in that Mercedes, isn't he? It's now 10 seconds between him and Eresh. Unfortunately, you've still got a GT3 runner in the midst of all of that, so it's still difficult to tell exactly, but the Mercedes driver and the Spanish outfit Velocity Racing team doing incredibly well for ahead of what is a pretty formidable pairing or pretty formidable team for Schwitzer Motorsport. He's just had a couple of the GT3 leaders go through, so we'll see exactly how that works. A bit of ping there from Travaglioli as well. That might come into play as well. It might make him a bit more difficult to predict, but also might make him a bit more of a scary prospect. As, talking of scary prospects, the South African team getting in the way of Bloom there for Schwitzer Motorsport, and now he's just about going to keep his third place. There's another Mustang now in amongst all of this. That's Hooper, the lapped and so far previously luckless entrant so far. Is he going to get out of the way, or is he going to try and race? I think he's going to get out of the way quite wisely to let Travaglioli through, and now battle resumes for third place, with Bloom struggling now to get away. As soon as he gets a bit of clear air, something comes up. It's destined that these two are going to scrap for a little while now. We're over 50 laps into this, with Bloom now. It will feel like he's doing 50 laps every time he crosses the line with all this pressure on him, as Travaglioli now has another look going into the chicane. I don't think he's going to manage it here, but is he going to set him up? The Ferrari can be excellent on curbs. Is he going to set him up going into the final corner? No, he's gone slightly wide, so it's going to be all about traction coming out of the final corner and how late you can break down into turn one. I think the Ferrari's got it just for the moment, so we will take a very quick break ahead of the last 10 minutes. Bloom, as we come back, just as Bloom locks up behind the Lexus once again. Bloom now fending off another attack from Travaglioli. I suspect he's going to be massively frustrated about that Lexus, who's ignored a bit of blue flag action there. Now we've got Travaglioli just about keeps it tight to the line but he's got Bloom now in the way. Bloom having to fight a lot harder than perhaps he was expecting after Travaglioni hit a bit of strife. Now we've got, I think it's GT4 and the GT3 to make it worse. The GT4 leader is getting right out of the way there. That's Garcia. He's got 3 or 4 GT4 free cars to come through. The Lexus goes wide, Bloom goes wide. We're going to need to pick this up again. Bloom carries, he just about keeps it, whereas the Lexus runs wide. Now, does he collect Travaglioni? He certainly balls him, and that's the Mustang as well coming through. A bit of carnage there too. Now, the GT3 still going past the GT4. The GT4 leader, that's Garcia, goes wide. Is that going to open up possibilities for those further back? I think it is. But we've got now a real battle on for third place. It's just a shame that it keeps getting interrupted. We've got Bloom now 1.1 seconds clear so far. More GT4s getting in the way. They'll be relieved for the next lap to have no GT4s around at all. A couple of GT3s here and there. And there, as soon as I say that, there is car number 5 who's just appeared from view. Is that car number 5? It's not showing exactly whom it might be. Just been lapped by car number 100. That's Manifold in front. So we will look to see what's happened there. That is now 26 seconds, say earlier. Carlos, excellent second stint for that 414 Racing team. Could be decisive, as Manifold now has to think mostly about what's happening behind. He'll be pleased to see what's happening behind with Bloom constantly in combat with Travaglioni. And Vuta now 7 seconds behind. I think they might have had a little bit of a block there before, because that was a little bit closer. Meanwhile, 16 seconds back. So what was possibly a win, as there's a bit of damage to that back end as well, that might account for some of that pace, is now nearly 1 minute off. If my maths is not to be corrected, is about 55 seconds off, and that is what one bad stint can do. Meanwhile, Travaglioni, we've got 7 minutes of this stint to go as far as I'm concerned. Travaglioni, are we going to see a change for third place? There's a little bit more battle scars on the front of the Ferrari. I suspect that's a legacy of the previous traffic misdemeanors that we've had before, with Travaglioni now hunting the German in front, Bloom, who's got to use all of his experience, use all of his guile to keep behind the Ferrari. At the moment, he's got 9/10 of a second on Travaglioni. That is going to be vital, because the Porsche isn't as good over the curves as the Ferrari, but it is excellent off of the traction zone that we're about to go through now, the final corner. Keeping it tight to the inside, though, leaves a little bit of wiggle room for the apex. That's fine, he can get on the throttle a little bit earlier, make a slightly wider corner. Now, as we see, 7/10 of a second, not close enough to do anything about it from there, as the GT3 turbulence comes into effect, so it's a bit more difficult to pass. We've got now 7.7 seconds back as well, so he'll be a factor, but no more GT4s to get in the way at this moment in time. They've got past them all, and the next one is at the Dunlop hairpin, about 30 to 40 seconds away from this. So a bit of pure racing for the moment, as we will stop commentary, but we will keep the stream on just for a little while afterwards whilst this sorts itself out. Travaglioni meanwhile 7/10 of a second back so far, and how's that going to be? I always expected the first sector to be there, as that's usually where Formula 1 was, so forgive me as we go now. We wait for the Dunlop curve. There's a yellow flag up, but I think all has been recovered as car 777. That's Gruner once again hitting a bit of problems, and that is a sorry stint made even worse for the NRW performance. He's now dropped to 7th behind Schwab, I think that is. It might well be Goat. He's coming into the pits. I suspect that is some pretty serious damage. That rear wing is now on wonky, and the diffuser slightly on the huff too, as it's flapping about. And that is going to be a long time in the pits. And what a sorry stint it's been for Gruner and NRW performance. I remind you that they were previously contenders for the win, but that is but a distant memory in the second hour. Speaking of the contender for the win, there's only one place to look at the moment. That's the MSA Racing 414 BMW, driven at the moment by Carlos, who's just extended again and again, lap after lap after lap. He's now got over half a minute, I would be willing to wager, over the competitors. We've got that now, not quite over half a minute, but 28 seconds when it does update. 28 seconds over Manafeld, who isn't getting away from Bloom, is he? Manifeld's struggling quite a bit now. What could be a battle for third could now be a three-way battle for second. Travaglioli and Bloom are both catching Manafeld in the 100 Porsche entry, and that could be where the battle resumes when we come back a little bit later on. We've got Falter now in 5th place, who's keeping a steady gap to the cars in front as well. Not really making any inroads, but he's got a troublesome Lexus in front, the South African entry of Mbele from Logistical Nightmare Racing, proving a bit of a nightmare for the leaders. Now, as he strokes his way around in 13th in that Lexus, having had a few problems, blue flags are waving. But will they be heeded, if that's even a word? We've got Go now coming out into 7th place. I suspect Gruner, still in there for damage. I suspect that's going to be there for a little while as Canoro goes past. So does Van der Beek now coming down the straight. And I think even Bolman might pass as well. He's a little bit further back, and there's still some connection strife there as he tries to pass the GT4. That must be, that's Neyring in the Schwitzer Motorsport for 4th place in GT4, but holding up the BMW in 11th. Rust is a little bit further back, so I don't think he's a factor for Gruner, who is still there in the pits. You've got Apex, Canoro, Van der Beek have all gone through, and Bolman now comes through. So that lead car, which was NRW Performance in 7th, it was in the lead, is now at least going to come out into 11th. Let's have a look now and just see where they come back out. That is Grunert. He is out in 11th, fighting away already with a BMW, and I think might be Bolman. That's not Bolman, that is, I think, one of the previously lapped cars. Is that? Let's just have a little look and see, because that might have been even Carlos. Was that Carlos? It was. Well, that's a turn up, isn't it? They were a lap. They were together. Not even 45 minutes ago. They were together for position. They're together now, a lap apart. Carlos will have lost a little bit of time there as he got forced out by the rejoining Ferrari, but not enough to really dent anything there as he goes past now, or tries to go past Neyring. Not really the wisest thing to do there, but they do sort it out. And now 777. It's a bit of a sickener, isn't it, for Gruner? 11th place, but a lap behind the car that you were competing with not an hour ago. Going back to the battle for third for the remaining 2 hours of this commentary stream before we come back a little bit later on, that is Travaglioli, who is currently in 4th place and feels like he's been forever staring at the back of Bloom, who hasn't really been, he's not been under attack at any point. He's had him buzzing around in the back, but he's not been under attack, and I suspect he's looking forward just as much as he's looking back. 1.7 seconds off the back of Manafeld. That gap is only ever going down, and Travaglioli, it's boomeranging a little bit between 1.3 to 7/10 of a second. It's not really been under that very much. It's not been much over, but it's not been under 0.7 seconds for a lot during this little battle. Vouter now is still 7.3 seconds back, which is not a lot in a 10-hour race, but not making any inroads at the moment. They're all making inroads on Manafeld. Manafeld now hasn't really got to grips with this at the moment. Carlos is now crossing the line, so I suspect this gap is going to stay at about 28 seconds after the earlier strife between him and the lapped car. And now we've got 1.5 seconds now for Bloom to Manafeld. The gap goes down. The gap goes down for the Ferrari as well. He's taken 3/10 out of Bloom, half a second out of Manafeld, and that is 1 second now, the gap between the third and fourth runner. But it's second and third that we're going to be looking at now as we leave commentary, but we will stay on this just for a little bit in order to try and see if we can get you the resolution to the battle as they go into the third hour of the race. I've been Jack Prentice. I shall see you a little bit later on.